Some coastal areas of Louisiana have also been left flooded. The storm, which has been reclassified as a tropical depression, has now reached the northeast of the country. Flash flood warnings have been issued across the region, including in New York, and meteorologists are warning of the possibility of tornadoes. It's thought some areas may see up to 8 inches of rainfall in the next 2 days. Sarah Walton, New York.
India's capital, New Delhi, is set to reopen schools this month after almost a 17-month-long hiatus. The opening of schools comes at a time when India is witnessing an uptick in the number of fresh COVID-19 infections. A controversial law called the Heartbeat Act has come into effect in the US state of Texas. The law makes abortions illegal as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy. FSN's US correspondent William Denslow reports.
This law is one of the strictest in the country and came into effect after the US Supreme Court didn't move on an emergency appeal. The law means that any citizen can sue someone that aids and abets an abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected, usually at around 6 weeks into a pregnancy. Critics of the law say the characterisation of a heartbeat that early in a pregnancy is misleading. The ACLU says up to 90% of abortions in Texas occur after the 6-week point, adding that the Heartbeat Act is blatantly unconstitutional.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at last Thursday's terror strike on Kabul airport that left 13 American service personnel, 2 British nationals and nearly 200 Afghans dead at the airport's Abbey Gate. There will be investigations and recriminations over that tragedy for months to come, and one central question is already looming. Why was the gate still open and receiving evacuees after the Pentagon learnt of a credible threat against it? In London yesterday, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab pushed back against reports that British troops wanted it kept open so they could continue evacuating UK citizens from the nearby Baron Hotel.
I don't recognise it as accurate at all. But what I would say is that we coordinate very closely with the US, and we did in the context of the raised terrorist threat. We warned people not to come to the airport. We alerted people in the crowd that were in contact with us to leave because of the risk, and we removed from the Barron's Hotel processing centre our civilian staff inside the airport, but that wouldn't have required leaving any gates open.
The Pentagon is refusing to comment on the initial reports published by the website Politico. The families of at least 2 of the slain US soldiers had, it's reported, furious interactions with President Biden on Sunday at Dover Air Force Base when the flag-draped coffins came home.
And the main news again, the Taliban is preparing to name its new government, which will have the hard task of governing Afghanistan, a country facing growing humanitarian and economic crises. In the United States, most of New Orleans is still without power, 3 days after Hurricane Ida caused major damage in the region. And India's capital, New Delhi, is set to reopen schools this month after almost a 17-month-long hiatus caused by COVID-19. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
We've made significant progress wiring the nation's schools for the internet, but we have to do more. Every child in America should have an internet-capable computer in their bedroom at home, preferably with a high-resolution webcam. I have been to children's chat rooms and have been shocked and disappointed to find they are frequently empty. Even when these youngsters do manage to find their way online, they lack the skills to do something as simple as pinpoint their location on Google Maps. I long for the day when someone can log onto the Nickelodeon Under 13 chat room and type, "Hey, any kids in here like to play Pokemon Mystery Dungeon? I have a Nintendo at my house," and be overwhelmed with instant messages. Then I'll know we're doing our job supporting technology in this country.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and as always, you're invited to join us, 603-283-6160. That's the number for you to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And with you on this edition of She Talk Live, it's Aria,
Lori, and Nikki Sunshine.
And there's a lot in the news today. One of the things probably not in the news today, though, or at least not outside of the Keene, New Hampshire sphere, is that, in fact, nobody is free. That's the person also known as Rich Paul. I still call him Rich Paul. Anyway, he was released from jail today, finally, almost 3 weeks after the magistrate or judge said ordered his release. Basically, it took them a very long time to come up with the terms and conditions. As soon as those were done, he was finally released. Nikki, I think you went to the jail to see him?
I didn't go to the jail to pick him up, but I did go to meet him at one of the local restaurants. So that was very nice to see him, and I'm glad that he is free at last. And
we're all very glad for it. And a lot of people are asking, when's he going to be back on the show? Is he going to be able to host? The answer to all of those questions is no. The terms of his release pretty much prohibit him from making any public statements at all. And that would include on the show. He's not allowed to do podcasts or talk to, I don't know about talking to the media, but if he's not allowed to do podcasts, presumably he's not allowed to talk to the media. So regrettably, he will not be able to be on the show or call in or anything like that, but he is free, and I don't know how he's doing beyond that.
He's in good spirits.
I imagine he spent a lot of time smiling today.
Yes, it was nice to hear his laugh and see his smiling face, so...
He usually is in good spirits,
yes,
in my experience with him, but I imagine today was a day for much happiness for him. And of course, he's now on his way home and there to await whatever is in the future. But so that's wonderful. That's good news, and we're all happy about it. It's sad because, I've been friends with him pretty much since I came to New Hampshire, that I can't just go wave at my friend and say hello, but that's just how it is sometimes.
Yep. The last of the Crypto 6 is finally free.
Yes, I'm happy to be able to say that and hear that. And no longer will it... Well, it's still free, the Crypto 6, because the charges and all of that is still applicable, but...
By free, I mean out of jail.
Yes. So in the rest of the world today, at least, there's stuff going on. New Orleans imposes a curfew to prevent violent crime, or to prevent crime in general, in the wake of Hurricane Ida, because apparently outlawing crime just isn't enough. They have to make it extra illegal because now you're also breaking curfew. I don't think they understand how this works. If someone's willing to break the law to loot stuff, they're probably willing to break the curfew law as well.
I can't go out and rob anywhere. I got a bedtime.
Yeah, right.
In other horrible news, the American military left a bunch of dogs and cats behind in Afghanistan. That's not surprising. But I'm asking, is the Afghanistan fiasco the end of the American empire? And I'm not the only one asking this. Surprisingly, we have mainstream media asking this question. How does an empire die? Usually in Afghanistan, I'm told. Often it seems there is a growing sense of decay, and then something happens, a single event that proves the tipping point. After the Second World War, Great Britain was all but bankrupt, and its empire was in shreds, but it soldiered on thanks to a U.S. government loan and the new Cold War that allowed it to maintain the outward appearance of a global player. In February of 1989, when the Soviet Union withdrew its military from Afghanistan after a failed 9-year attempt to pacify the country, the United States, of course, spent 20 years in that futile effort. It did so in a carefully choreographed ceremony that telegraphed solemnity and dignity, very much unlike the rushed, chaotic mess that was the U.S. withdrawal. An orderly procession of tanks moved north across the Friendship Bridge, and they go into a lot of boring details here that aren't interesting. The Gromov, that was the Russian military guy at the time, triumphal speech was not quite the equivalent of George W. Bush mission accomplished following the 2003 Iraq invasion. I've never watched that speech. Have either of you?
I have not.
I'm not sure what the mission was in Iraq that they could have accomplished.
Yeah, I know. That's a great point. I don't watch many political speeches, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I tend not to as well.
I tried to tune out politicians and bureaucrats as much as possible.
For all of the talk of internationalist duty, the Afghanistan that the Soviets left behind was a charnel ground. Out of its population of 12 million people, as many as 2 million civilians had been killed in the war. More than 5 million had fled the country, and another 2 million were internally displaced. Officially, only 15,000 or so Soviet troops had been killed, although the real figure may be much higher, and 50,000 more soldiers were wounded. So it was a devastating war for them as well. But it was only 18 months after the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan that a group of hardliners tried to launch a coup against the reformist premier, Mikhail Gorbachev. But they had miscalculated their power and popular support in the face of public demonstrations against them. They soon failed, followed by the collapse of the Soviet Union itself. Of course, by then, much beyond the Soviet Union's Afghan quagmire, had conspired to fatally weaken the once powerful empire from within. I don't think Afghanistan is that big of a slice of American history. I mean, it was a large war and a very long-lasting war, but financially, I don't think it represents as large a percentage of what the U.S. government has spent as, say, COVID-19.
Yeah, probably not.
I think COVID-19 is most likely to represent the end of the American empire, but, the fall of Afghanistan, as it were, probably is just the telegraphing of that. While the two events are humiliatingly comparable, only time will tell whether the old adage about Afghanistan's being the graveyard of empires proves as true for the U.S. as it did for the Soviet Union. I just find it interesting that they're willing to admit that the U.S. is an empire. I don't see a lot of that from the mainstream media, but they're absolutely willing to admit that. It is true for the time being that America retains its military prowess and its economic strength. That last one's not true. America's economic strength is plummeting. But for 2 decades now, it has seemed increasingly unable to effectively harness either of them to its advantage. Instead of enhancing its hegemony by deploying its strengths wisely, it has repeatedly squandered its efforts, diminishing both its aura of invincibility and its standing in the eyes of other nations. God, they go on for a long time about unrelated nonsense. So that's pretty much it. I'm done with this article. It is not very related to the topic at hand about, the major signs we're seeing about the possible collapse of the American empire, such as the massive amounts of inflation that we've seen since, COVID-19 started. They just turned on the printer supply and they haven't stopped.
Just in the past couple of years.
Yeah, just in the last couple of months.
Something like 20% of the entire 25%.
I think it's more than that. I think it's like closer to 30.
Well,
I mean, it's growing every day.
The entire money supply in U.S. history was created within the last year.
Yeah, that's
And meanwhile, the government's
insane.
they're giving it inflation numbers at like 5% and things like that. And we're looking at it like, no, dude, inflation's closer to like 30% at this point.
And that's hard to even fathom.
It is.
Those are big numbers. 30% is a lot.
Yeah, food prices are going up. Restaurants are raising their prices. The only thing not going up really are wages.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
That's usually the way it works. And I'm not saying that, an increase in the minimum wage is the way to solve this problem or anything like that. There's nothing the government can do to solve this problem. It can only make it worse, and it's doing everything it can to make things worse. Going through the news today, I saw something about a 4th stimulus check. That's on top of
Yeah, I saw that too, yep.
the monthly child support check that's coming out to everyone in America who has kids. And
the government just reminding everybody that it's your daddy is basically what that is.
Right.
And they also gave out $1,200 last year to every American citizen, then $600 more, and then $1,400 more. So what does that come to? Almost $4,000?
Yeah.
To every single American, not to mention the unemployment benefits.
The unemployment boosts, those were insanity. Nobody wanted to go back to work because it was so much.
They still don't want to go back to work.
Well,
it's
a lot
insane.
of people, especially minimum wage workers, were making more on unemployment before they even got that extra little bonus that they were like $400 extra a week or whatever it was.
I think it was $600 a week.
It did start at $600.
So why would you go back to work, honestly?
Why would you? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't blame any of those people, but when you go to a restaurant now and their average wait time is like 2.5 hours because they have 2 waitresses, it's
now
like,
you know why.
There's a problem. 603-283-6160 if you want to join us at 603-283-6160. There's more coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the free private cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. FreePrivateCities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You're invited to join us, 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria, Nikki, and Lori. And I've seen stuff about the Texas abortion bill, but I don't know the details about it because Texas is pretty remote from my concerns these days. So when I see it, I'm just like, oh, yep, that's Texas being Texas, and I carry on. But evidently, their new ban essentially bans abortions because any after 6 weeks are prohibited.
Yep. So it says, Texas enacted the nation's strictest state-level abortion ban Wednesday, prohibiting the procedure in most cases after 6 weeks of pregnancy. And then So anything 6 weeks before 6 weeks, you're not even going to know you're pregnant at that point.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so because, I mean, you're not going to know you're pregnant until, you miss your period or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So you have like a 2-week window there to figure that out. And that seems extremely unlikely.
Right. So it says the court is still considering the request from abortion providers and their advocates and could act at any time to block the ban. But the justice's failure to move quickly left clinics in Texas saying that for now, they would not provide abortions more than 6 weeks from a woman's last period. From your last period. So you're only 4 weeks pregnant.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm trying to think of the cases where people would even get an abortion that early. I think normally, well, one, you wouldn't know, but you'd wait a little bit longer than that, I would think.
Yeah, I think it was 12 weeks was like the standard before.
Yeah, like while you're still in your first trimester.
Right.
But
they're saying that once a heartbeat is detectable,
and
which
that's
is 6 weeks.
Okay.
Which is 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So it says providers said the ban, which relies on private citizens to sue people who help women get forbidden abortions, effectively eliminates the guarantee in Roe versus Wade and subsequent Supreme Court decisions that women have the right to end their pregnancies before viability and that states may not impose undue burdens on that decision. It was specifically designed to turn away pre-enforcement challenges in federal courts. If the Supreme Court declines to intervene, the most likely challenge would come after the law is used by a private citizen. Then the person sued.
Yeah, because that's the weird thing about this is that they're not going to have police monitoring this or whatever system they would have in place. Private citizens have to monitor this and sue people.
Yeah.
In order for it to be brought into the light, I guess.
There will be no official enforcement of it. It will be private citizens suing anyone that they say has helped anyone else get an abortion. But how far does that extend? If I
know
drive
that's kind
you,
of just like hearsay, right?
Right.
So
if I drive you to the abortion clinic, is that me helping you get an abortion? Is it just the providers? Is it somebody who gave you a phone number?
Now.
How is this going to be abused by people? Oh, my ex-girlfriend, I hate her now. I'm going to call and get her sued for helping someone get an abortion that she didn't even do. Anyone can sue anyone, and it's $10,000 minimum.
Wow. Do you guys know how big a baby is at 6 weeks?
I don't have any idea.
It's like just a clump of cells.
It's a grain of rice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
One single grain of rice. That's how big the fetus is.
And they want to ban the
Yes. I'm trying to think of how many
pregnancy.
cells it would even be.
Not enough. Not enough to be a person that survives outside of someone else's body.
No, I just can't imagine.
That's one of the best pro-choice arguments I've ever heard is that abortion isn't killing a fetus, it's terminating a pregnancy.
Right.
Because it's all about the body rights of the woman. And a lot of libertarians don't seem to get this, is that, okay, sure, maybe you agreed to get pregnant and you agreed to allow this thing, you consented to have this thing growing in your body. It doesn't matter. You can still withdraw consent at any time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Things happen, though. What if it was a case of rape? What if the condom broke? What if your birth control failed? There are so many possibilities where you took the precautions and you still get pregnant.
Well, and there's a lot of medical reasons why you would have to have an abortion even later.
Right.
Some women have had to have an abortion in the 3rd trimester because their baby died. And you're going to make her have a stillborn birth. I mean, at that point, she would have to, even if they initiated the birth, because it's a full baby. But either way, if the fetus isn't viable, or if it's going to be very, very sick when it's born, I can't even think of any argument anyone would have to say that is, immoral.
So I'm O negative. And when you're pregnant and you're O negative, you're supposed to get the shot called the Rogam shot, which stops your body from creating antibodies that kills your baby if they have a different blood type. Say I didn't know I was pregnant and I didn't get the shot and I had some kind of blood intermixing between me and my baby. I had some kind of, hemorrhaging within my body. And that baby would then need blood transfusions inside of me.
Jesus.
If that would even work, that might not even work.
And the baby still might
work.
not survive. And the baby still might come out with serious health problems. You're telling me in that situation, the quality of life for me and that baby is going to be so wonderful that I should just continue on? I don't think so.
To get back to your point, Nikki, I don't think a lot of people realize what it means to get a 3rd trimester abortion out of a medical necessity. I mean, Once they reach the third trimester, I mean, that mother has already picked out a name for that child.
Yep.
Probably has already painted the
basically
bedroom.
a full-grown baby. It's at least like 4 pounds at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not an easy decision for a person to make.
Right. That's a person that you've been, inside of you. You can feel them move. They can hear you. They respond to your voice.
And imagine you're already going through all that trauma of having to make this decision and having to do this and go through all of this physical and emotional trauma. And now people are calling you a murderer and whatever else and trying to, sue you and put you in prison for doing something that was already very, very hard to do.
And might save your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on top of that, not only do they have this whole abortion ban, but Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, has approved stem cell therapy for adults, which isn't that the height of hypocrisy? We can use stem cells, but you can't have an abortion. Where are you getting those stem cells? You're trucking them in from out of state?
Yeah, and if you don't know what stem cells are, they basically come from, in lesser terms, aborted fetuses.
Right.
So,
and he took Regeneron when he was diagnosed with COVID, which is monoclonal antibody therapy, which is made with stem cells. So,
yep.
I'm not surprised to hear that Abbott is a hypocrite at the very least. I mean, most politicians are. I mean, there were countless pictures during the COVID-19 pandemic of politicians telling people, you got to wear masks, you got to social distance. And then they're out there at parties or whatever, and they're not wearing masks. Or they go on vacation while in the middle of a lockdown. I think Michigan's governor did this.
Yeah.
I mean, several of them did.
Probably all of them.
Yeah. They're like, don't leave your house. Meanwhile, they're like partying in Cancun.
Right.
Yeah. So hypocrisy among politicians is not a new thing, but this is striking that Texas has allowed stem cell stuff to be done with adults.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, they're banning all abortions over 6 weeks.
Yep.
Is there more to the story? I know the fine is $10,000. It's not really a fine either. A private citizen has to sue you, and the minimum that you will have to pay to that private citizen who was not harmed in any way by your actions is $10,000. But how could the private citizen possibly claim to have any legal standing?
Well, I mean, what better way to get neighbors against each other than to dangle $10,000 in front of them?
Yeah, but legal standing is a thing, right? You're not victimized by this. You're not harmed by this in any way whatsoever. You just know about it.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Was there legal standing to actually bring...
Won't someone think of the children?
I don't think
Probably.
they did. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live was the first major media in the world to talk about Bitcoin. Were you listening when the crypto revolution began? Did you buy back then? Well, now it's 10 years later and a new generation of crypto could change the world again. If you listened to Free Talk Live last year, you heard the hosts of Free Talk Live talking about Intercoin, a new cryptocurrency to help unite local communities and businesses and make their communities stronger, all without having to rely on government. Intercoin team members have already built apps that have successfully reached millions of users in dozens of countries around the world. And starting in August, Intercoin is launching worldwide. Anywhere you live, this is your chance to buy it using your favorite Ethereum wallet by going to exchanges like Uniswap. Using Intercoin, you can even launch your own cryptocurrency for your own members and your own customers under your own brand. Want to learn more? Just go to intercoin.org and follow the steps to get some Intercoin for yourself. Be part of the next generation of crypto. And remember, you heard about intercoin.org here on Free Talk Live.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The Taliban is preparing to name its new government, which will have the hard task of governing Afghanistan, a country facing growing humanitarian and economic crises. The key appointments could come as soon as Thursday. Meanwhile, several hundred US citizens remain stranded in Afghanistan with no clear path out of the country. The UK government has confirmed that it's in talks with the Taliban about ensuring safe passage for British nationals and Afghans who want to leave. It comes as the UK announces more details about what it's calling Operation Warm Welcome for Afghan refugees who've been evacuated to Britain. Here's Home Office Minister Victoria Atkins.
People who've worked with the British Army over the last 2 decades, whether as translators or security guards or as soldiers and so on, that they are given indefinite leave to remain. That's important because it gives them stability, but it also means that they can enter the job market.
In the United States, most of New Orleans is still without power, 3 days after Hurricane Ida caused major damage in the region. The The storm is now threatening to cause flash floods in the northeast of the country, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
Louisiana's largest utility company, Entergy, says electricity has been restored to some customers in New Orleans. But the firm says it could be several days before it's able to estimate when full power will be restored. Some coastal areas of Louisiana have also been left flooded. The storm, which has been reclassified as a tropical depression, has now reached the northeast of the country. Flash flood warnings have been issued across the region, including in New York, and meteorologists are warning of the possibility of tornadoes. It's thought some areas may see up to 8 inches of rainfall in the next 2 days. Sarah Walton, New York.
India's capital, New Delhi, is set to reopen schools this month after almost a 17-month-long hiatus. The opening of schools comes at a time when India is witnessing an uptick in the number of fresh COVID-19 infections. A controversial law called the Heartbeat Act has come into effect in the US state of Texas. The law makes abortions illegal as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy. FSN's US correspondent William Denslow reports.
This law is one of the strictest in the country and came into effect after the US Supreme Court didn't move on an emergency appeal. The law means that any citizen can sue someone that aids and abets an abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected, usually at around 6 weeks into a pregnancy. Critics of the law say the characterisation of a heartbeat that early in a pregnancy is misleading. The ACLU says up to 90% of abortions in Texas occur after the 6-week point, adding that the Heartbeat Act is blatantly unconstitutional.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. As always, you can join us, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria,
Lori,
and Nikki.
And I want to tell you about Bitcoin.com. It is the best place to go to learn about cryptocurrency. Just click getting started at the top and take a few minutes out of your day to learn about this important world-changing information. Because there's never been a better time. Bitcoin, it's climbing and falling. As far as I'm aware, it's still hovering around the $48,000 mark at the moment. But
yep, it's been going up.
It's only going to continue going up because the USD is only going to continue going down. So it really doesn't matter whether or not the demand for Bitcoin increases. What it's measured against is steadily going down. So Bitcoin is a way to escape from the U.S. inflationary monetary policy. But maybe you already know that and you already know the basics of cryptocurrency. Well, check out news.bitcoin.com to stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that are relevant to you. Bitcoin.com is your source for everything crypto related, so check it out. Bitcoin.com. Now, we're talking about the Texas abortion ban and how stupid it is because, as you both have pointed out, most people won't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. I mean, that's 2 weeks of missed periods. I don't know what that really is like, but it sounds like it would be rare for someone to catch that information and know that they're pregnant and then to arrange to have an abortion all within that 2 week period.
Right. Most people don't track their cycles. You know, most people are just like, oh, it's around this time, unless they're trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
So you're just, one day you're like, I haven't gotten my period in a while. I should probably take a test. And then boom, you're 8 weeks pregnant.
Yeah. And that's normally at 8, 10, 12, you know.
Right.
It's not at 6 weeks.
No.
Okay, see, I never thought about that. Yeah, that makes obvious sense. They're not sitting around with the calendar going, okay, it's been exactly 4 weeks, so maybe something's wrong.
Right, and everybody has different cycles too, and your cycle can fluctuate. Some months you have 28 days, some months you have 32 days. Like, everybody has a different normal.
I knew someone that didn't know she was pregnant until she was in her second trimester. Like, she was just bigger. She had a very irregular period, and she just didn't think anything of it. And then she was and she was almost, I think she was at least like 20 weeks or something. Like, she was like halfway through her pregnancy, and she had no clue.
Some people have breakthrough bleeding too. Like, somebody with a really light cycle can have breakthrough bleeding every month and still think they're getting their period.
Yeah, it's very common
until
actually.
They're really pregnant, like, 6 months pregnant.
So this 6 week abortion ban, it's it raised the question of what does it mean to assist someone with getting abortion? You actually found that.
I did. So it says the legislation is different from most other heartbeat bills. They've all the other ones have been blocked, but this one did not get blocked. So it's different is that it takes the pressure off enforcing the law from government by allowing private citizens to sue an abortion provider or anyone who aids and abets anyone who wants to get an abortion. This can include driving them to an appointment, helping with funds to pay for the procedure, or providing information on how to get an abortion. Removing government officials from the process makes legal challenges to the law more difficult.
Certainly, and it makes it like it. And if Texas was criminalizing it, right, you wouldn't be breaking the law if you drove someone to Arizona or Oklahoma to get an abortion.
Right.
But under these terms, someone could still sue you for having done that, even though it's not illegal. They didn't criminalize it per se. They didn't add jail time or anything like that. They just said, okay, you can be sued by private citizens and you will have to pay them for whatever reason at minimum $10,000.
Yeah.
And in order for this to be challenged in the Supreme Court, that has to actually happen.
Right.
It's just such like a weird way to go about this. To have basically the state of Texas is going through private citizens to kind of pin people against each other. And then you have to pay the other person that's suing you a fine for offending them for getting an abortion. Like, it had nothing to do with them.
For helping someone, for giving someone a phone number to an abortion clinic, you could be sued, you know?
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then there's
So what about Google?
Then there's at least three
Sue
people.
Google.
Yeah. Are you going to sue Google when people are Googling stuff? Like, are you kidding? It makes no sense to me.
It doesn't. But then look at how many people can be sued in this typical transaction. It's like, okay, sure, here's the number for Planned Parenthood. And sure, your other friend's going to give you a ride and your boyfriend's going to help pay for it. And then there's Planned Parenthood. That's 4 different people who can be sued. So that's $40,000 for the potential claimant, the plaintiff, whatever, who hasn't been harmed by this in any way.
Anyway, right.
Suing over it. Absolutely insane. Well, hopefully this comes up before the Supreme Court of Texas, because I can't imagine that that's going to hold up. But
I know. I'm sure this won't last long because there's so many flaws in this system, and it honestly makes no sense at all to me.
As I understand it, almost all of the other attempts by Republican states to impose things like this have also been struck down, haven't they?
Yeah, they've all been blocked every time. This is the only one that wasn't blocked. It took effect today.
So this is actually in effect right now?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Move to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Well, isn't New Hampshire weird about abortions as well?
I don't know anything about that. I don't know. I know they're weird about midwifery stuff, which is kind of like my forte/field, but
are they? Do they not allow
they
midwives?
No, it's not that they don't allow midwives, but that they just have stricter laws than actually, believe it or not, Massachusetts. Massachusetts is one of the freest states as far as midwifery goes, and you don't have to get a license in Massachusetts, but I believe you have to get a license to be a midwife in New Hampshire. So,
in Arizona, you can't even have a home birth.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm pretty sure that abortion is at least heavily restricted. I can't just look it up, but the abortion laws in New Hampshire, if I remember correctly, they're not very lenient or very good. But that's not surprising with so many Republicans in the legislature. You know,
in New Hampshire, at least, you're only an hour away from another state. In Texas, you're
also true.
You're hours and hours and hours and hours and hours away.
I mean, here in Keene, we're like 30 minutes away from Vermont, which probably has fairly loose abortion regulations.
Right.
I mean, it's legal, and I think that's pretty much...
It's still better than Texas.
Yeah.
It would be hard to be worse than Texas, for sure, with Texas basically weaponizing citizens against each other to enforce what is ultimately just religious beliefs on behalf of the Republican legislature.
Yep.
But that's not new, and it's not surprising. That's what government does, and when you have these conservative states, that's the kind of silly thing they attempt to do. And we saw it during the Trump administration. Mississippi attempted it, Georgia attempted it, Arkansas attempted it. All of them wanted to be the first to fight this battle out in the Supreme Court to get Roe versus Wade overturned, and I don't think any of them were successful.
No.
So I think you were thinking of New Hampshire having stricter abortion laws because this June they were trying to pass a bill it was called the Abortion Access Bill, I believe.
Okay. That may have been it.
So
I don't know.
they were trying to pass some sort of abortion ban, but I don't think it ever went anywhere. It was the Fetal Life Protection Act.
Oh, that sounds like some silly Texas-esque nonsense.
The proposal would prohibit abortions at or after 24 weeks gestation, except in cases of medical emergency. Currently, New Hampshire is one of 7 states that has no gestational limit on abortion procedures.
Okay.
What does that mean?
You can get them all the way to the end.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which you should be able to, because if you're getting an abortion in the 3rd trimester, it's for a medical reason.
Right.
Nobody goes through their entire pregnancy and then is like, you know what? I think I'm going to abort this baby, because at that point the baby is full grown and you're still going to have to deliver that baby.
Yeah.
It's not just like how you think of an abortion, like it's just some minor procedure. It's really never a minor procedure. Even in the 1st trimester, it's still kind of a big deal for the woman having it. It's a big decision to make. It's not just... I think a lot of people have the common misconception, these women are just using abortions as birth control. And that is not how it is at all.
It's a medical procedure. Even the morning after pill, you take it and you're going through intense pain and like cramping and bleeding and for days. It's an induced miscarriage and they're painful.
It's definitely not a minor procedure. I know when I took my sister to the abortion clinic in Arkansas, I think it was a 2-day process. They had to do part of it one day and part of it the next, and she was not well for weeks after that. I mean, it's not a minor thing, and it's not a decision that anyone really makes lightly.
Right.
And of course, this was Arkansas, so they did have protesters outside of it, and I got to yell at them, and that was fun. But what are your thoughts? I'm sure a lot of people out there are shouting at us. Do it in person or on the phone, 603-283-6160.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, where you can join us, weigh in with your opinions, talk about whatever is on your mind. I know we're broadcasting on a lot of conservative radio stations, so I'm really kind of surprised we don't have an influx of callers who want to tell us why we're wrong about abortion. But hey, maybe you agree with us. Maybe you disagree. 603-283-6160. You know, here at Free Talk Live, we're big supporters of decentralization, moving away from centralized control mechanisms like Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. And because of that, we've migrated to Odyssey as our, I don't want to say primary streaming channel because we don't really have a primary streaming channel, but we do have the one that we actually care about and pay attention to, and that's the Odyssey channel. You can find it at video.freetalklive.com. And the reason for all of that is that we're constantly getting kicked off of the centralized platforms. Facebook, at least on one occasion, I don't pay attention to it, but they immediately, 1 minute into the show, flagged us with the COVID-19 misinformation thing. Our YouTube channel has received several strikes, so if you want to be able to actually watch our show and not worry about getting censored, plus on Wednesday nights, usually we're topless in the show, and we can't do that on Twitch and YouTube without getting obviously kicked off. So video.freetalklive.com. That's where you can find our uncensored videos that just will not be deleted and will always be there for you to watch. But sometimes decentralization just isn't enough. I mean, what do you do when the government shuts down the internet entirely? It's the new authoritarian weapon of choice, and some 850 internet blackouts have been documented in the last decade in countries around the globe. 90% of them in the last 5 years, all orchestrated by governments. Over the last decade, governments worldwide have intentionally shut down the internet at least 850 times. What's behind this troubling trend? More people are getting online and getting access to the internet, someone said. As governments see this as a threat, they start thinking the internet is something they need to control. Now think about that and the story we talked about a night or two ago, or Monday night, where the U.S. government is actually flagging posts for Facebook to review and remove. So Facebook and the U.S. government working directly together, and it's because they want to control the internet. It's no different in the United States than it is in North Korea or China.
Yeah, they just go about it a different route. And a lot of people are making the argument, because it is a restriction on free speech, and people are making the argument, well, it's a private company, so they have the right to do whatever they want. But when Facebook is in bed with the U.S. government, it ceases to be a private company. And when these companies are getting money from the government, taxpayer money from the government, I think that's when it stops being a private company, and when their censorship is a restriction on free speech.
Absolutely. And, you know, I don't know about Facebook receiving money for the government or any of that. I don't know what's going on there, but I do know that when the U.S. government is telling Facebook what posts to remove, they're intertwined, and Facebook is part of the state, and your free speech rights should apply, but they don't, because, quote, Facebook is a private company that is doing its work on behalf of the U.S. government, at the U.S. government's orders and discretion, by the way. Fully fascist over there at Facebook. So these staggering statistics come from a new report released Wednesday by Access Now and Jigsaw, a division of Alphabet, Google, which also enjoys censoring people, that focuses on addressing societal threats with technology. The report documents the history of internet shutdowns over the last decade, the economic toll shutdowns take on the countries that impose them. Oh, they mean internet shutdowns. It's too bad they don't mean lockdowns, too. That's what I thought at first. It's like, oh my God, Google's doing research into the economic toll of lockdowns? That would be amazing. But no, they took out Don't Be Evil from their guidelines. Palacio Antonio leads Access Now's campaign, which has now been documenting internet access and internet shutdowns since 2016. He said, internet shutdowns don't ensure stability or resolve crises that are happening. It's actually endangering people's lives. The report, published in Jigsaw's publication The Current, traces the recent spate of internet shutdowns back to the 5-day shutdown in Egypt in 2011. And I think I remember hearing about that at the time, right after the military coup that the Obama administration refused to admit was a military coup. They shut down the internet for 5 days. I don't know, that was almost a decade ago, or at least a decade ago. Although exact data on every shutdown that has ever happened is non-existent, and smaller scale blackouts had taken place before that, never before had an entire country, one where more than a quarter of the population was connected to the internet, simply severed itself from the open web. Now here in the United States, significantly more than a quarter of the population is connected to the internet. And I don't think the mechanism really exists for the government to pull the plug on it, but it's not from lack of trying. I know SOPA and PIPA, they're constantly putting forward legislation that will allow them to basically shut down the internet. It keeps getting blocked, thankfully, but it's inevitable that they will get something approved that allows for that. Egypt's shutdown sparked condemnation from some Western countries, but the number of internet blackouts has only expanded since then. These are often timed to elections in countries around the world, costing the economies of those countries billions of dollars. One estimate cited in the study suggests that Myanmar, which has had a string of severe shutdowns, may have lost 2.5% of its GDP as a result, which is about half the damage wrought by the Great Recession on the U.S. in less than a third of the time.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's
significant.
Does it say what these societal dangers are that they're trying to protect people from?
The governments are trying to protect people from?
Yeah, to why they shut down one of these dangers?
Information?
No, I thought they were saying the opposite. I thought they were saying that shutting down the internet was a societal danger, but they're saying they're doing it to prevent people from societal dangers?
I don't know what the governments are saying, but I think you're correct, and that the article here and the people behind are like, hey, this is dangerous to society, and it's causing people to get killed, and it's causing people to lose money.
Because think of if they did this in America, a lot of people would not be able to survive without some sort of internet connection. You know, people wouldn't be able to get to work without their GPS. People wouldn't be able to, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that people just rely on the internet for.
I've actually lived this year without internet access at all, and it is difficult. When I got released from jail, I was allowed initially no internet access whatsoever until, I had talked to my supervisory officer and gotten approval for certain things, which I knew would happen, but it would take a few days. So for those first 3 or 4 days, it's boring without internet. And when you look at all of my music, I stopped downloading and buying music a long time ago because I discovered Spotify. Yeah. So I just always streamed my music. Suddenly, I had nothing to listen to.
You're like looking for a CD?
Yeah. Well, I didn't even have a CD player because why would I? I couldn't watch any movies.
You would just use your phone or your computer.
Yeah. Couldn't watch any movies or any television because obviously, why would I? I can just stream those from Netflix or Hulu or whatever.
Right.
But no, suddenly I couldn't.
I don't even have phone service. Like I just use Telegram. So if I'm home with my kids and my daughter has asthma, like she has an asthma attack and there's no internet, how am I supposed to get in touch with my husband?
Yeah. Not to mention, if they took my entire key ring when they raided my place and, searched everything. They took my key ring for whatever reason. Luckily, I didn't have my Eclipse key on that particular key ring, so I still had my Eclipse key, but it didn't even occur to me when a friend dropped me off and I went inside that I was entering a place where I wouldn't be able to contact anyone. And if they hadn't left my Eclipse key, I would have just been stranded
there, yeah,
all night. And I still had to go out and get, cigarettes and stuff.
Yeah.
So it sucks being without internet, not being able to text anyone or communicate with anyone, because that's the majority of how people communicate these days is through digital devices.
And I don't know about you guys, but I haven't had cable or a landline in a long time.
Yep, neither have I.
Me neither. Yeah.
I just stream everything off of, Netflix or whatever.
Yep, that's what I do as well. I still do it, but having 4 days without anything whatsoever to do, and then
I hope you had books.
I didn't.
Did you have books?
I do have books now.
Oh, but you were using like digital books?
Yes. I was using digital books.
Oh my gosh,
then.
so you literally had nothing.
Yeah. All I could do was hang out with my cats and play the guitar, so that's what I did.
Oh man.
So they did at least leave my music equipment behind, right? So that was nice of them. But it wasn't really that bad because I still had my car, so I could go and I talked to friends and all of that. But yeah, once like 5 o'clock hit and my other friends were at work and my other friends were doing Free Talk Live and my other friends I'm not allowed to legally contact, it's like, God, all right, cats, you and me again. Are you having fun, cats? Because I'm not. But ultimately, I did get not all of that back, but most of that back. I can stream Hulu and stuff like that, but it's a challenging experience, and I would urge anyone out there to just give it a shot one weekend. Just totally disconnect everything from the internet and see how it goes, because it's not a fun experience, and governments are forcing that on their citizens. We're going to talk more about that. That's coming up. And also coming up, possibly all of the people involved in a police murder incident have been indicted, so good news.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The Taliban is preparing to name its new government, which will have the hard task of governing Afghanistan, a country facing growing humanitarian and economic crises. The key appointments could come as soon as Thursday. Meanwhile, several hundred US citizens remain stranded in Afghanistan with no clear path out of the country. The UK government has confirmed that it's in talks with the Taliban about ensuring safe passage for British nationals and Afghans who want to leave. It comes as the UK announces more details about what it's calling Operation Warm Welcome for Afghan refugees who've been evacuated to Britain. Here's Home Office Minister Victoria Atkins.
people who've worked with the British Army over the last 2 decades, whether as translators or security guards or as soldiers and so on, that they are given indefinite leave to remain. That's important because it gives them stability, but it also means that they can enter the job market.
In the United States, most of New Orleans is still without power, 3 days after Hurricane Ida caused major damage in the region. The storm is now threatening to cause flash floods in the northeast of the country, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
Louisiana's largest utility company, Entergy, says electricity has been restored to some customers in New Orleans. But the firm says it could be several days before it's able to estimate when full power will be restored. Some coastal areas of Louisiana have also been left flooded. The storm, which has been reclassified as a tropical depression, has now reached the northeast of the country. Flash flood warnings have been issued across the region, including in New York, and meteorologists are warning of the possibility of tornadoes. It's thought some areas may see up to 8 inches of rainfall in the next 2 days. Sarah Walton, New York.
India's capital, New Delhi, is set to reopen schools this month after almost a 17-month-long hiatus. The opening of schools comes at a time when India is witnessing an uptick in the number of fresh COVID-19 infections. A controversial law called the Heartbeat Act has come into effect in the US state of Texas. The law makes abortions illegal as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy. FSN's US correspondent William Denslow reports.
This law is one of the strictest in the country and came into effect after the US Supreme Court didn't move on an emergency appeal. The law means that any citizen can sue someone that aids and abets an abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected, usually at around 6 weeks into a pregnancy. Critics of the law say the characterisation of a heartbeat that early in a pregnancy is misleading. The ACLU says up to 90% of abortions in Texas occur after the 6-week point, adding that the Heartbeat Act is blatantly unconstitutional.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at last Thursday's terror strike on Kabul airport that left 13 American service personnel, 2 British nationals and nearly 200 Afghans dead at the airport's Abbey Gate. There will be investigations and recriminations over that tragedy for months to come, and one central question is already looming. Why was the gate still open and receiving evacuees after the Pentagon learnt of a credible threat against it? In London yesterday, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab pushed back against reports that British troops wanted it kept open so they could continue evacuating UK citizens from the nearby Baron Hotel.
I don't recognise it as accurate at all. But what I would say is that we coordinate very closely with the US, and we did in the context of the raised terrorist threat. We warned people not to come to the airport. We alerted people in the crowd that were in contact with us to leave because of the risk, and we removed from the Barron's Hotel processing centre our civilian staff inside the airport, but that wouldn't have required leaving any gates open.
The Pentagon is refusing to comment on the initial reports published by the website Politico. The families of at least 2 of the slain US soldiers had, it's reported, furious interactions with President Biden on Sunday at Dover Air Force Base when the flag-draped coffins came home.
And the main news again, the Taliban is preparing to name its new government, which will have the hard task of governing Afghanistan, a country facing growing humanitarian and economic crises. In the United States, most of New Orleans is still without power, 3 days after Hurricane Ida caused major damage in the region. And India's capital, New Delhi, is set to reopen schools this month after almost a 17-month-long hiatus caused by COVID-19. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
It's the Onion Radio News. Starbucks begins its sinister Phase 2 of operation. This is Doyle Redland reporting. After a decade of aggressive expansion throughout North America and abroad, Starbucks suddenly and unexpectedly closed its 56,423 worldwide locations today to prepare for what insiders call Phase 2 of the company's long-range plan. Cynthia Valcamp, Starbucks head of marketing, made this brief statement at a press conference earlier today.
We have enjoyed furnishing you with coffee-related beverages and are excited about the important role you play in our future plans.
Existing Starbucks franchises across the nation have been shuttered with high-strength titanium, and the well-known Starbucks logo has been slightly altered to present the familiar mermaid figure as a cyclopean mermaid whose all-seeing eye forms the apex of a world-spanning pyramid. Doyle Redland for The Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you're invited to join us. 603-283-6160 is the number for that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Lori, and Nikki.
And we're talking about government shutdowns of the internet. And again, I just have to challenge anyone to just take one weekend or even just a 24-hour period and don't prepare for it, right? Because you don't get to go out and buy a bunch of books before the government shuts down your internet. So don't prepare for it. Don't go ahead and download a bunch of movies or buy a bunch of DVDs or whatever. Just suddenly one day pull the plug, see how far you make it before you have to turn the internet back on. It's a harrowing experience, and governments around the world have done it 850 times, most of them in the last 5 years. And, you know, this story here talks about the economic impact and the devastation that's happened, and it goes on. That's to say nothing of the impact of shutdowns on individuals, some of whom shared their stories with Access Now for the report. A Ugandan woman told the story of how she went to town to use the ATM, only to find that it wasn't working and neither was anything else connected to the internet. Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I didn't think about that either.
So if she didn't have cash on her, there's no card payments, she's just SOL.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so she wouldn't even be able to buy groceries or anything for her family.
Everything was down and everyone seemed confused about what was happening and stranded like me, the woman wrote. There's more about this, and it's worth getting into because it's disgusting what governments are capable of doing and what they want to be capable of doing. But we are a call-in show, and we have a caller, so let's go to Gabriel from Minnesota. Gabriel, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, one thing I thought was pretty encouraging, at least potentially, was that Jordan Peterson had an interview with Bob Murphy. He had him on there to talk about Austrian economics, and Jordan Peterson seemed really interested in trying to absorb and comprehend the concepts there.
Jordan Peterson is sort of one of these right-wing talking people, right?
To some extent. I'm not sure if he has a direct political affiliation. I mean, some of his points are leaning slightly left, but mostly right as far as that spectrum goes.
Isn't he the dude that said, isn't he the one who's fixated on like Taylor Swift's eggs and whether or not she can get pregnant past 30?
I'm not sure. I know he's a psychologist in that he's been on Joe Rogan and stuff. But
yeah,
I haven't heard about
he kind
that.
of defied the policies at his university where he was a professor. I don't know if he still is, but he kind of made his name by like defying the idea that you have to say their pronouns however they want, or else you're committing hate crime somehow. But I just found it really encouraging. He's basically been a kind of an idol for a lot of the younger men out there these days who are, kind of feeling, I don't know how to describe it, sort of insufficient, and he kind of encourages them, so then they look up to him. But
okay.
Yeah, that's what I
well, it's good to be a positive role model.
Sure.
But you said you wanted to talk about violence.
Yeah, I also want to talk about violence. The difference between violence and self-defense. So I was reading John Locke's 2 treatises on civil government.
Well, to be fair, self-defense is violence. The argument is just that it's justified violence.
Well, I wanted to look at the word a little bit. Violence is kind of a derivative of violation, and a peaceful person is the one being violated. So if somebody initiates harmful force, wrongfully against another, then that would be an act of violence. But the other one who's on the defensive using also force wouldn't be called violent force. There'd just be defensive force, right?
I would call it defensive violence, sure. And I mean,
well,
sure.
The other person initiated a violation. The defender.
I mean, the etymology of the word doesn't matter. Words change in their meanings over time. We can go back to using 15th century definitions of words if you want, but none of us will be able to carry on a meaningful conversation. To me, that's the part that matters. And what does violence mean today in English? And it's
behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something.
Yeah. That is the violence that I would go with, because that's what all of us understand violence to mean.
Sure, in modern parlance, but if you want to get into the philosophical perspective of it, digging it back a little bit, it's not very far to go to see that it's derived from the word violation. And a peaceful person is the one being violated. Their defensive force in response to that, according to John Locke, the violator, the initial violator...
So we're back to the 17th century to get our definitions.
Well, he's one of the foremost thinkers still on the concepts of how to apply property rights and how to distinguish between legitimate or illegitimate leadership, basically.
I mean, are we also going to go to the 17th century for definitions of marriage?
I don't know. That doesn't matter to me. That's kind of a thing between two people and God, right?
But that's not what the 17th. That's not how John Locke understood it.
I don't think I read anything in his two treatises on civil government.
I didn't say he wrote anything about it, but I guarantee you that John Locke back then, he understood that the definition of marriage was a betrothal thing involving bridal dowries and basically a father selling their daughter into being a wife. Should we go back to that, since we're using their definitions of things?
To join together in communion of interest to produce children or advancement of the species is John Locke's definition of marriage.
Oh, so he does indeed have one.
Oh,
so
he actually defined it himself. Okay, interesting.
Okay, so he is against gay marriage. So are we going back to being against gay marriage because John Locke said that marriage was to produce children?
Nah, I mean, somebody can be right on some things and then wrong on a couple. So, I wouldn't hold him up as some paragon of ultimate virtue, but he did have a good definition there on who's a violator and who's not. His description was like, if somebody violates a peaceful person, they're initiating a state of war. And in that case, they're basically volunteering that they put all themselves on the line, their risk all the way up to and including the loss of their own life if they're going to violate a peaceful person's rights to property or,
I agree with that.
Sure. That helps us define what violence is. Defensive force wouldn't, probably even in today's technical terms, ought not to be considered, self-defense shouldn't be considered violence.
But it is literally violence in the modern sense. It's just justified violence.
It still shouldn't be considered. I'm saying we're calling it...
It's not aggression, but it is violence.
But violence is violating someone.
Yes, if you use a 17th century definition of the word, and you don't want to communicate to anyone who lives in the 21st century, I mean, if you want to have a conversation with John Locke, absolutely use his definitions. If you want to have a conversation with someone living today, use their definitions.
So to me, self-defense would be defined as preventing suffering or violence. The prevention of violence would be self-defense.
Thank you tonight for the call, Gabriel. Etymology is a weird thing. I mean, words change over time. The same people who want to, there's a big push to use the historically correct meaning of gender to mean sex. And it's like, okay, look, but if you go just one step further back, gender is just a synonym for category. It's a category of thing. So definitions, what they used to mean, not relevant to me at all. I don't care how the ancient Romans defined a thing. I don't care how John Locke defined a thing. What I care is, how can I communicate with people? And sure, I understand if I'm going to read John Locke, I have to understand his definitions for things.
Or like Shakespeare. It's like, I remember in high school reading Shakespeare was like, you had to decipher everything they were saying and you had to like full on analyze it. And it took you like the entire semester to read the play.
Yeah.
Because it was probably like less than 100 pages that you were reading, but it was just so crazy to decipher as a high schooler that you literally needed it to be broken down to understand what they were saying.
Yeah, you run into that a lot when reading a lot of the Founding Fathers and stuff like that. The words they used are not only spelled differently than how we spell them today, but they mean not entirely different things, but they mean different things today. What are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. Maybe you can look it up on the internet, which 850 times people couldn't do.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Your calls and thoughts are welcome. As always, you're invited to join us. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria,
Lori,
and Nikki.
And September 4th at 3:33 p.m., there's an event coming up. You can join the Smiles and Hugs for Peace virtual event, but you don't need an internet or a digital device to participate. You don't need any internet, to participate, which is good for these people in these countries that 850 times have had their internet disconnected, because the virtuality of this event is in the fact that Star Child will not be physically present, but will manifest for you to the extent that your magical thinking allows you to conjure his presence. If you don't know who or what he is, that doesn't matter. Don't let that be an impediment to whatever magic you may experience. At approximately 3:33 p.m., you may hear the ringing of a bell or bells or other unusual sounds, especially if you set a phone alarm for 3:33 p.m. Pause whatever you're doing, look around you, and start smiling. If you see someone else grinning, give that person a hug. If you see someone else smiling and coming towards you, stop and give them a hug. As you hug, hold this intention in your mind. A world based on love and cooperation, not coercion, is possible. Both smiling and hugs are healthy and good for you, containing no carcinogens, trans fats, or high fructose corn syrup, and hopefully no artificial ingredients. I always love doing that. Anyway, let's go to the phones. We have James calling from Arizona. James, you're on Free Talk Live. Going once.
Doctor.
Oh, he's there.
Hey, doctor. Oh, I'm there. Yeah. I'm wondering how much time I have because I called to yell at you, like, as invited by...
Are you even talking to me?
If you were in your...
Are you on speakerphone?
Doctor. Oh, forgive me.
Take yourself off of speakerphone, James. Otherwise, we can't really hear you.
Hey, doctor,
That's
forgive me.
so much better.
I hope I have the time back because I called in to answer James's queer... and he asked for people to call and yell at him.
Yeah,
about a subject you were talking about earlier, and I'm profoundly sorry for any medical difficulties. A thing, as James Baker calls it, inside you, a thing, had medical difficulties that, given that you live in the 21st century, you knew that before.
Are you referring to abortion?
Had a chance to be born. I'm referring to a fellow human being, James Baker. And I was going to ask the doctor if James Baker were in your...
James, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you one more warning. If you dead name me again, I'm dropping the call. That's it. Have a good night, James. Stupid and pointless. Evidently, James is anti-abortion or whatever terminology they use.
Or whatever he was trying to say. It was kind of very unclear.
Yeah, the gist of it that I got was something about being pro-life, I think is the term they use, but I don't know.
Pro-forced birth.
It was very unclear. So anyway, back to the story about internet censorship and government shutting down the internet. The 2011 Egyptian shutdown and others since have drawn attention to the role internet service providers play in countries where very few exist. In highly developed markets like the United States, where there are thousands of ISPs, the sheer size of the market provides a degree of protection. I don't think it does. If the U.S. government told all of the ISPs, passed a law saying, hey, look, get rid of the internet service right now, I don't think it would matter how many there are. They would do it. Mm-hmm. But in many countries, as in Egypt in 2011, the web can be brought to a shuddering halt with just a few phone calls. Access Now is calling on ISPs in those countries to resist government pressure to block or throttle internet access and to report the requests they receive. Global companies like Facebook and Google, meanwhile, have a role to play in tracking internet outages and determining whether they were intentional. Maybe Facebook is being blocked or Google platforms are being shut down in these areas. Can you find out what is happening on the ground? That context is always important. You can see a drop in traffic, but once you have the context like, okay, there's an upcoming election, there's an ongoing conflict, then we're able to see whether this is an intentional attempt by the authorities to keep the rest of the world in the dark or if this is a technical problem. Governments also are paying attention. A number of global groups, including the United States, have condemned internet shutdowns as a violation of basic human rights. I don't think it's a violation of well, I guess so. Free speech is a basic human right. So I guess I agree with them on that. I just don't like saying that the internet is a basic human right.
Yeah, because it's not a natural thing, right?
Right. And it has to be provided to you from another human being, so it can't possibly be a human right.
And, I mean, if someone was setting up their own internet, but even then, it's just, I don't know. We're getting very 21st century here.
I'm going to say that free speech is a basic human right, and the government inhibiting your ability to use the internet and express your free speech is a violation of human rights. But you have no right to access the internet unless you pay someone for that service. But Antonio insists more pressure is needed, saying, quote, the more voices we have speaking the same language and pushing back against this particular problem, the more the issue becomes important for the various stakeholders that are able to influence or bring that problem to an end. I can't imagine very many of these companies in Egypt that, shut down the internet in 2011 were like publicly traded and had to worry about stock values and stuff like that. Maybe they were. I don't know a whole lot about the Egyptian economy, though. At any rate, the ability of governments to shut down the internet is a problem. And I don't know how... Look, the military in Egypt took over the government in 2011 in a military coup. You really expect an internet service provider to tell those same people, no, we're not going to shut down the internet for you, even though you're the military and you just took over everything?
Right.
No,
exactly.
The military would just take over the ISP.
Right.
And shut it down that way. So I can't say I even blame the ISPs for cooperating because the internet was going to get shut off either way. But if they did it this way,
they didn't get killed.
Yeah, and they didn't get killed, which is the real problem here is how do you hold governments accountable for their actions? You can't expect companies that have licenses to lose, especially in military dictatorships that just, had their military take over their entire government, to be the ones willing to stand up and say, no, we're not going to do that. Because they're the military. If they want to do a thing, they have the guns and the means to do it, whether you like it or not. Such as the U.S. government recording 33,000 phone calls of a New York Times writer who was charged as being a paid Iranian agent. A journalist, basically. U.S. government, 33,000 of his phone calls being recorded. The U.S. government was surreptitiously listening in on the calls of a frequent New York Times opinion contributor who now faces federal charges for allegedly being an unregistered foreign agent of Iran. The Times contributor, whose name I'm not going to attempt, and sorry about that, pled not guilty in February after being arrested at his Boston area home. At an August the 25th status hearing, a U.S. attorney handling the case said he was preparing to turn over 33,000 audio recordings of the defendant. An August 27th letter said that in addition to the audio recordings, the government is turning over IRS, health insurance, and banking records. So quite a lot of discovery in that particular case. 33,000 phone call recordings, so that's insane. The defendant said in an email that the recordings are the sum of all of my calls over 13 years, maybe even longer. I have better things to do than listen to my own calls with my family and friends. This is a giant waste of time. I feel for you, dude. 603-283-6160 if you want to join us. Sad news coming up. Dogs and cats left behind in Afghanistan. That's coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
And now, time for something totally different. Intercoin is a project that's working to make crypto mainstream. We use the power of smart contracts to help any community in the world launch their own cryptocurrency. Ever wanted to release your own coin or build your own app to grow your business? Intercoin's team builds apps that have reached 9 million people around the world. And now it's time to help make a real social impact in your local community. Go to intercoin.org and join the movement. That's intercoin.org.
You know, when we first started Intercoin about 3 years ago, we had a big vision to help every community in the world have access to the same tools that large states and federations do, to hold local elections on the blockchain, to have their own local currency, shop local, hire local, and help fight the forces of globalization that have decimated some of these communities.
Go to intercoin.org and join the movement.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The Taliban is preparing to name its new government, which will have the hard task of governing Afghanistan, a country facing growing humanitarian and economic crises. The key appointments could come as soon as Thursday. Meanwhile, several hundred US citizens remain stranded in Afghanistan with no clear path out of the country. The UK government has confirmed that it's in talks with the Taliban about ensuring safe passage for British nationals and Afghans who want to leave. It comes as the UK announces more details about what it's calling Operation Warm Welcome for Afghan refugees who've been evacuated to Britain. Here's Home Office Minister Victoria Atkins.
People who've worked with the British Army over the last 2 decades, whether as translators or security guards or as soldiers and so on, that they are given indefinite leave to remain. That's important because it gives them stability, but it also means that they can enter the job market.
In the United States, most of New Orleans is still without power, 3 days after Hurricane Ida caused major damage in the region. The storm is now threatening to cause flash floods in the northeast of the country, as FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
Louisiana's largest utility company, Entergy, says electricity has been restored to some customers in New Orleans. But the firm says it could be several days before it's able to estimate when full power will be restored. Some coastal areas of Louisiana have also been left flooded. The storm, which has been reclassified as a tropical depression, has now reached the northeast of the country. Flash flood warnings have been issued across the region, including in New York, and meteorologists are warning of the possibility of tornadoes. It's thought some areas may see up to 8 inches of rainfall in the next 2 days. Sarah Walton, New York.
India's capital, New Delhi, is set to reopen schools this month after almost a 17-month-long hiatus. The opening of schools comes at a time when India is witnessing an uptick in the number of fresh COVID-19 infections. A controversial law called the Heartbeat Act has come into effect in the US state of Texas. The law makes abortions illegal as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy. FSN's US correspondent William Denslow reports.
This law is one of the strictest in the country and came into effect after the US Supreme Court didn't move on an emergency appeal. The law means that any citizen can sue someone that aids and abets an abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected, usually at around 6 weeks into a pregnancy. Critics of the law say the characterization of a heartbeat that early in a pregnancy is misleading. The ACLU says up to 90% of abortions in Texas occur after the 6-week point, adding that the Heartbeat Act is blatantly unconstitutional.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to weigh in with your opinions. 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Lori,
and Nikki.
And I'm really genuinely surprised. Every other time that we've talked about abortion on this show, it's a hot topic, and it immediately gets the phone lines going. And we spouted our pro-choice stuff for the first 30 minutes of the show and like nothing. I'm shocked. I'm like, genuinely shocked. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. Now, I'm an animal lover, and I think everyone probably at this point knows that about me, so it makes me really sad. I'm not particularly moved about the humans left behind in Afghanistan because anyone could have seen the writing on the wall, and any human could have seen the writing on the wall and gotten out of Afghanistan. But the dogs and the cats, they're not that fortunate. They don't know that there's a regime change coming. So a Kabul-based animal rescue tried to get dozens of dogs and cats out of the Taliban-controlled locale before American troops left, but they weren't allowed on military aircraft, said the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals International in a recent news release. Now, is the Taliban a threat to cats and dogs?
I don't think so.
I didn't think they were
I have never
either.
heard anything about that, but I generally think that most human beings are a threat to cats and dogs. So, or I guess not cats and dogs specifically, but maybe just animals in general.
See, the sad thing to me isn't being concerned that, oh no, now the Taliban is in charge of where these dogs and cats live. It's that this means that, humans left behind the dogs and cats to whom they were bonded. To me, that's That's disgraceful to abandon a pet that, you're generally their entire world.
Yeah.
It is messed up. The Kabul Small Animal Rescue, a veterinary clinic and rescue in the Afghanistan capital, had at least 130 dogs under their care and an additional number of cats, but weren't able to get them out of the country when numerous private charter aircrafts couldn't gain access to the airport. So some of these were rescues. Why are we concerned about the rescues not being able to leave Afghanistan? I understand the ones who were in the vet or whatever, but they're also a rescue clinic. I'm not overly concerned about how the Taliban is going to handle the Kabul Small Animal Rescue, because I've never heard of any of all of the things they've said about the Taliban in the recent weeks, because they have been really crazy. I saw one article, I don't remember from who, about how the Taliban was raping corpses.
Oh my gosh, I didn't hear that one.
I didn't hear that either.
And I shared it on Facebook. I said, there is absolutely no chance that the hardcore extremist religious Taliban is raping corpses. This is a fear piece, a horror piece that is totally fabricated, and that's not even an uncommon thing to find. That one was just a bit too extravagant for anyone to believe it.
So I just did a quick Google search to see if the Taliban has ever been accused of abusing animals.
Thank you.
And everything that came up was about the U.S. government. And I typed in Taliban, and everything that came up was about like the U.S. government blowing up sheeps and stuff. And nothing came up about the Taliban. So that's all I have to say about that.
That sounds like the animals are better off then. They were not given access to the flight we had secured to transport them out of the country. They are within the airport in an area used for housing employees. At the far end of the flight line, we haven't been able to confirm the number of dogs released. During her departure from the airport on August the 30th, Charlotte, who was a rescuer, requested the U.S. military open the bags of dog food she was able to bring into the airport and scatter their contents in the area where the dogs had been released. I'm very confused because, I didn't skip ahead in the article. They just skipped ahead themselves. So presumably they released these animals, and this one was like, hey, give them this dog food as well, I guess. So it's unclear.
They were in a shelter, and then they tried to fly them out of the country and couldn't, so they just let them free in the airport?
Yes, instead of... Yes, good point. Instead of just leaving them in the shelter. All military working dogs with the U.S. Armed Forces did leave with their handlers ahead of the August 31st deadline, which is good because I thought that the U.S. military had also left behind dogs in Afghanistan. But the stray animals with KSAR couldn't leave because of issues with customs. It's always customs in the way. Human, dog, or cat. I can't imagine the insanity of attempting to apply customs laws to dogs and cats.
It's very hard to get animals from other countries into the U.S. We, one time, me and my sister volunteered in Guatemala at a animal rescue center, and we found this dog that we fell in love with, and we were like, we got to take him home. And we were inquiring about doing that, and it was really, really complicated, and they told us even if you get all of his vaccinations and everything that he needs, you can still be denied. Like, we could get him on the plane and show up in the U.S., and still be denied by U.S. Customs. And at that point, the dog can't go back. You can't buy it a plane ticket back to Guatemala. So you basically have to have it euthanized because the U.S. won't let them in.
Jesus.
So we were like, we're not even going to risk that. We're just going to, I guess, unfortunately, leave this dog here.
So why would they have to euthanize the dog? I mean, they have to take the dog off the plane to euthanize it. I assume they don't like shoot it on the plane or anything. So why couldn't they?
I don't know. The Australian government recently in one province, an animal shelter, to prevent outside animal shelters from coming to pick up their animals, did shoot and kill like 19 dogs, I think it was.
At the shelter?
Yes.
Well, yeah, these
Instead
dogs...
of euthanizing them properly, which they certainly had the capability of doing, they just shot and killed these dogs.
Euthanizing animals for no reason is just something that makes me so angry, because it's like, you could, even if it's domesticated dogs and cats, it would be better to let them run free than to murder them. And then they're going to talk about, oh, well, we're trying to save people, this, that, and the other thing. We have to put everybody on house arrest to rescue, to save all these people. Yet they're murdering hundreds of animals. And this isn't the first time Australia's did this. We had another story months ago where they murdered a bunch of feral cats.
So the thing
I remember that.
The thing I was wondering, though, is they're not going to shoot the dog on the plane. So they have to take the dog off the plane and take it somewhere to euthanize it. So why can't they just put the dog in quarantine since it's already off the plane?
They do it somewhere in the airport. I'm assuming
really?
They have some sort of like medical place in the airport where they would euthanize. I don't really know exactly how it works, but they told us, and I don't know how common this is, but they told us it was a possibility, and we were like, no way, we are not risking that. The animal's life would be better on the streets of Guatemala than it would be dead. So
I had no idea they had like a death room at the airport for
Are
animals.
you surprised, though?
No,
I mean, really,
no,
when
not
people talk
really.
about, why we need kill shelters and stuff like that, like, and just shelters in general that euthanize pets or cats and dogs, they're like, oh, well, we're doing it to protect the animals. No, but you're not. You're doing it so that you're not inconvenienced.
Exactly.
You could drive more slowly to make sure you don't hit the stray dogs that are running around. You could do that. And sure, many of them would starve to death. Not very many of the cats would, I don't think, but some would. Some would get eaten by dogs or whatever. That's nature. It sucks, and I hate to think about it, but it is what happens in nature. But a much better solution would be for these shelters to spay and neuter the cats.
Yeah.
And dogs, and then release them back out into the wild.
And, even in the United States, it is very, very hard to adopt a dog. I remember my ex-boyfriend his dog passed away, and he was trying to adopt a dog. So, and he was like the best pet owner there is. He was like very, very good with the dog, like loved the dog, like it was his firstborn child. And he had such a hard time adopting a dog. I even wrote this man almost like a job thing, like a letter of recommendation, almost like he was applying for a job or like college or something for the dog, like writing about how excellent of a dog owner he was. And he went through interviews, and it was like every single shelter in the state just denied him because he didn't have a fenced in yard. They asked his salary. It was like absurd. And then they have kill shelters. So I'm like, you're making it so hard to rescue animals, and then are wondering why people are buying purebred animals from breeders and why there's kill shelters. It's crazy to me why it's that hard to adopt a dog.
I hate myself to an extent for not considering, getting a rescue. Of course, I wanted a golden retriever because that really fits nicely with my lifestyle, but I did go to a breeder instead of adopting some. But my cats, on the other hand, they are rescues. So I guess there is that. What are your thoughts? Should acquiring animals to be your companions be easier in the United States? I think it should be. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
When commercials come on, don't push the button. Instead, listen. Even if you don't sell things for a living, you're still selling in the various conversations and transactions that make up your busy day. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. So take a lesson from Madison Avenue. Often the fewer words, the more effective the message. Like Jiffy Lube, where you never need an appointment, or the Office Max ad that says, you supply the ambition, we supply everything else. How about online ticket broker StubHub.com, the way in when it's sold out, or CyberCupidMatch.com's seductive, go ahead, it's okay to look. How cleverly and succinctly can you distill your message? For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to share your thoughts and opinions. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria,
Lori, and Nikki.
And I wanted to say thank you to C. Hall, who is tonight's amplifier. C. Hall is a gold level amplifier, which means that C. Hall is giving $10 per month to the AMP program. You can find out more about it at amp.freetalklive.com. That's amp.freetalklive.com. Basically, it's money that we use to advertise, market, and promote Free Talk Live, hence its name. We don't ask $10 per month. All it takes to join is $5 per month. That gets you in. But C. Hall has chosen to give more, and we appreciate that. So thank you so much for the contributions, and we hope you continue doing so. Check it out, amp.freetalklive.com. Let's go to the phones. We have Kirby calling from Indianapolis. Kirby, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, good morning, guys. First of all, I forgot to tell you, I heard my friend Rich Paul was out and about.
He is.
So, if one of y'all can talk to him, give that brother a hug for me.
Oh, I absolutely will, Kirby.
Thank you. What I wanted to mention tonight was, I live in Indianapolis. We've had 178 criminal homicides this year. The previous record was 160. And this ain't going to slow down. And if you look at the news, it's like this in every major urban area in the country.
What do you think is happening? What do you think is causing it?
I mean, I could attribute part of it to COVID and people being locked away, but or maybe some of it could be the fact that COVID has got people broke. I don't know. I know part of it here is the gang members that have migrated from Chicago and Gary. But that's not even going to account for the murder rate we're looking at now. I mean, in the neighborhood I live in, we had a issue with strong arm robberies all winter. There was a mutton jet team, a male and a female, just doing strong arm robberies up and down, all through the neighborhood, all winter long.
What is a strong arm robbery? I don't think I've ever heard the term.
They run up to you and like, give me your money or I'll beat you up.
Okay.
strong-arm robbery.
So a mugging, essentially.
Yeah, but basically.
Okay.
But that was all winter, and here's this, and I mean, we hit 140 homicides before I came up for Fort Fest. This is ridiculous. I've never seen it like this. And you know, my doctor today had the nerve to ask me, "Why do you carry a gun?" I'm like, "Dude, you are 2 miles from Murderville."
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, I have been seeing this in the news over the last several months about an increase in violent crime and stuff like that, but we live in New Hampshire where violent crime is almost non-existent, so I don't see any of it. My first thought was just, well, yeah, more fear-mongering from the media. But you actually live in one of these cities and are reporting that it's actually happening, and that's tragic.
Yeah, this is real. I went to bed at 9 o'clock last night. We had 176 murders. I woke up at 4 this morning. We had 178.
So 2 additional people murdered, and in a single night, in a...
Yep. In less than 8 hours. Well, in 8 hours. I mean, this is ridiculous.
And on your previous peak year, you said it was 160, so that's less than 1 murder every other day.
Yeah. I mean, we had a guy shoot up a funeral a month ago.
Oh, my goodness.
He made bond last Monday. They dropped his bond from $100,000 to $25,000, put him on an ankle bracelet, no home detention. He's out here running the streets of Naptown right now.
I for one am thankful for the criminal justice system for allowing someone who shot up a funeral to be released just within a month, while they kept my friend Rich Paul for almost 6 months.
Yep. And what did Rich do? Nothing.
Yeah.
He certainly didn't shoot up a funeral.
Yeah. He didn't do a thing.
And the guy who shot up a funeral killed a 4-year-old.
Oh my gosh,
Or at
that's
least
terrible.
Hit one, not killed him, but
still,
hit
regardless.
He hit a 4-year-old at a funeral and is out?
Yeah.
That's insane.
He's out with lesser bail conditions than the members of the Crypto Six, mind you.
Yep.
Who are all accused of non-violent crimes, yet this person was murdering people and is just running around free.
Yep, and people wonder why I carry a gun everywhere I go.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. I miss the ability to open carry. That's one of the things I miss most. Obviously, what I miss most is the ability to use cryptocurrency, but the second thing is the ability to open carry, to always be secure in my person.
Yeah, just the freedom you feel with the safety that comes with having a firearm on your person is very important to a lot of people.
Yep, we can do both here. They even have Bitcoin machines in the neighborhood now.
In Indianapolis?
Yep, there's one 2 blocks from me.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, in the long term, that will help the poverty situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it will, because I still say poor people do crime because that's how they get money. If you make sure they have money, they won't do crime.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Kirby, thank you so much for the call tonight. I hope nothing happens to you out there in Indianapolis, but 2 murders in an 8-hour period when...
That's crazy.
Your previous year's maximum had you averaging less than 1 every 2 days. That's pretty horrifying. I'm glad that the mainstream media wasn't blowing things out of proportion when they talked about an increase in violent crime, at the very least.
Yeah, I found something on Yahoo News saying that for the first time in history, Indianapolis appears to have surpassed Chicago as the most violent city in the Midwest.
Wow.
Yep.
So it's not just violent crime in general in Indianapolis.
Yeah, and Kirby was just saying that I guess the gangs are migrating from Chicago to Indianapolis. So I don't know if that has something to do with it.
Why?
But
why are they going to Indianapolis?
Well,
because Chicago probably isn't a great place to live nowadays. Maybe Indianapolis is better. I don't really know an excessive amount about Indianapolis, but...
Well, we also have Jeanette on the line calling from San Diego. Jeanette, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
Yes, I'm calling. Well, first, yay that nobody is out. Yay, Crypto 6.
Thank you.
But the reason for my call is the San Diego County Board of Supervisors held a meeting yesterday to pass a motion to declare that COVID-19 misinformation is a public health crisis. The head of the of the Board of Supervisors, Nathan Fletcher, added this agenda item at the last minute, but people were able to rally and show up and speak on the topic. And the way it works is that everyone gets like 2 minutes to talk about any given agenda item.
Okay.
And the meeting ran from 8 a.m. until almost past midnight because about 300. Yes, because about 300 people showed up to speak against passing this agenda item.
But they did anyway, didn't they?
But they did, yes, correct.
Well, I'm glad everybody got their voices heard. It seems like if they actually ran it for that long, they didn't just cut it short and say, well, sorry guys, you didn't make it.
Yes, they did. I mean, some people left because, imagine sitting
understandable.
there for that long. But, I mean, there was enough speakers that the speakers ran from, because they had other agenda items, and, of course, this was the last agenda item, right, so that people would give up and leave. But the speakers on this agenda item ran from about 4 p.m. to midnight, and then they ended the meeting shortly after midnight. And then this morning during a closed session, they voted to pass the notion 3-2.
Well, at least there were two people who possibly were swayed to change their minds.
Yes, we're very lucky that the two of the supervisors, one in particular, a man named Jim Desmond, has been a proponent of how pointless these lockdowns are and masks and the importance of allowing people to make a personal choice on whether they should get this vaccine or not. And I'm so thankful, especially to Nikki, who's in the medical field, for speaking the truth about what's really going on with these vaccines. And I'm just thankful that I have Free Talk Live as a source to get the real information and not just what the mass media is trying to push.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the call tonight, Jeanette. I'm surprised to hear there's anyone in San Diego who isn't totally on board with this. I'm curious why you're still in San Diego. Of course, we got to go out to break, so I don't have time to ask you why you're not moving to New Hampshire. But definitely, I can't even say things are that much better in New Hampshire because there were still mask mandates here and there was still a lockdown here.
But they could not mandate forced vaccination for the kids at the Keene State, so
that's true.
That's a success.
There was definitely a success. What are your thoughts? Is COVID-19 misinformation a public health crisis? 603-283-6160.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. A top U.S. military official says it's possible that the country could cooperate with the Taliban on future counterterrorism operations in Afghanistan. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, was speaking to reporters for the first time since the U.S. completed its troop withdrawal earlier this week after 20 years.
We don't know what the future of the Taliban is. But I can tell you from personal experience that this is a ruthless group from the past, and whether or not they change remains to be seen. And as far as our dealings with them at that airfield or in the past year or so, in war, you do what you must in order to reduce risk to mission and force, not what you necessarily want to do.
Any possibility of coordination against ISIS-K with them?
Possible.
In recent weeks, the U.S. had been cooperating with the Taliban, its longtime enemy who now control Afghanistan, in order to facilitate the evacuation of more than 120,000 people from the country. U.S. President Joe Biden says America is firmly committed to keeping Ukraine safe against Russia. He welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to the White House just days after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which has left allies questioning U.S. security commitments. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
President Biden said he wanted Europe whole, free and at peace, reassuring President Zelensky that the U.S. is a country, despite the pullout from Afghanistan, that can be relied on.
And the United States remains firmly committed to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity in the face of Russian aggression.
Zelensky said the U.S. was a supporter of Ukraine's territorial integrity, following Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the continued border conflict with Moscow-backed separatists. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
A bankruptcy settlement has dissolved Purdue Pharma, the maker of the highly addictive painkiller OxyContin. That clears the way to resolve thousands of opioid lawsuits, but critics say it shields the family that owns the drug maker. U.S. correspondent Rachel Silverman reports from Oakland.
The plan dissolves the drug maker and shifts assets to a new company not controlled by the Sackler family, whose members currently own Purdue Pharma. The new company will be owned by a trust run to combat the opioid epidemic. The bankruptcy plan includes a $4.5 billion contribution from the Sackler family members, but it shields them from future opioid litigation. The Sacklers have denied allegations they bear responsibility for the opioid addiction crisis.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Looking today at last Thursday's terror strike on Kabul airport that left 13 American service personnel, 2 British nationals and nearly 200 Afghans dead at the airport's Abbey Gate. There will be investigations and recriminations over that tragedy for months to come. And one central question is already looming. Why was the gate still open and receiving evacuees after the Pentagon learnt of a credible threat against it? In London yesterday, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab pushed back against reports that British troops wanted it kept open so they could continue evacuating UK citizens from the nearby Baron Hotel.
I don't recognise it as accurate at all. But what I would say is that we coordinate very closely with the US, and we did in the context of the raised terrorist threat. We warned people not to come to the airport. We alerted people in the crowd that were in contact with us to leave because of the risk, and we removed from the Barron's Hotel processing centre our civilian staff inside the airport, but that wouldn't have required leaving any gates open.
The Pentagon is refusing to comment on the initial reports published by the website Politico. The families of at least 2 of the slain US soldiers had, it's reported, furious interactions with President Biden on Sunday at Dover Air Force Base when the flag-draped coffins came home. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. A top U.S. military official says it's possible that the U.S. could cooperate with the Taliban on future counterterrorism operations. President Biden tells his Ukrainian counterpart that the U.S. is firmly committed to keeping Ukraine safe against Russia. And a bankruptcy settlement has dissolved Purdue Pharma, the maker of the highly addictive painkiller OxyContin. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
The only nation where this regularly happens concludes that there's no way to prevent this. A college rape victim is pretty thrilled about recounting her assault to a faculty committee, and the nation's depressed individuals march on the Atlantic Ocean. This is the Onion Week in Review. Secretary of Veterans Affairs Eric Shinseki announced plans this week to improve healthcare for American veterans with a new $500 million state-of-the-art waiting room. The 150,000 square foot complex will reportedly feature a wide selection of magazines, 2 water coolers, and receptionists who will immediately give veterans vague answers about how long they can expect to sit there before receiving inadequate healthcare. And in this week's commentary, a local man finds owning a cat is a great way to meet women who magically appear in your living room. In other news, a new study finds employee morale drastically improves after watching a coworker throw a fit. A wise oracle proclaims to all at a barbecue that he felt a raindrop, and an elderly man is hailed as alert.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us, 603-283-6160. That's the number if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Lori, and Nikki.
And it's kind of sad that Conan isn't on tonight because he's a hardcore... I don't want to say he's a believer, but he's definitely open to the possibility that all of this is just a simulation, that all reality is just a simulation. Obviously, there's no evidence against that, and there's no evidence for it, but that may be changing, according to a new physics experiment that you found, Nikki, that suggests there is not an objective reality. So we may get off into the weeds here for a bit, so be prepared. It's going to be an interesting discussion.
Buckle up. So this is an interesting article from Interesting Engineering. Someone once said, "The world is all that is the case." But is it? Researchers performing a long-awaited experiment created different realities that are incomprehensible, proving that objective facts are made to exhibit properties that cannot cohere, according to a recent study shared on a preprint server.
Did they happen to put that in English?
Yeah, it is just kind of like a long run-on sentence. So...
I'm not sure I followed that.
Yeah,
so,
it said there were unobservable universes or realities. Is that what it said?
So it as the article goes on, it kind of explains the confusingness. So the next sentence is, sound confusing? You're not alone in thinking so. As this all involves some pretty complicated physics, but in short, the takeaway is that reality is always at odds with itself. Which is kind of, so it's kind of like a spin on, the theory is blanking my mind. It's like a really, really common one. Not string.
Schrodinger's cat.
Not string. It's like kind of like string theory. Okay, well, it doesn't matter anyways, but I know I'll think of it in a second. But Nobel Prize winner Eugene Weiner described a thought experiment in 1961 that highlighted an uncommon paradox of quantum mechanics. That's what I was thinking of, quantum physics. Specifically, it reveals the strangeness of the universe when two observers, like Weiner and his friend, observed two distinct realities. Since the thought experiment, physicians have used it to... Physicists. I was like, that is not the right word. Physicists have used it to explore the very nature of measurement, in addition to the bizarre idea that of whether objects actually exist or not. This is a pretty crucial feature of science.
I mean, and I love this concept. I got a lot of flack about this for saying prove eggs exist or whatever when I argued with Christopher Cantwell, but it's true. The reason we see an egg is because we can't peer down with our eyes to see the individual atoms and see that the egg itself, the whole, is really just an illusion. What we're looking at is vibrating energy. We can get to that level with microphones, but then microscopes. But then there may be something further beyond that we can't detect with microscopes, like string theory and stuff like that. We don't know at this point, and we may never know. But ultimately, we do know it is scientifically sound that these things that we see, everything we interact with, is just made up of vibrating energy.
Yeah, and all of the particles aren't even touching. So
So it's
some
just an
say if
illusion.
you go into a different realm that you could just be here with us, but in a different dimension, and you could just stick your hands through things almost as if someone was thinking of a ghost. So it is a fascinating theory. And there's also theories of multi-dimensionality, like we're living in a multiverse, and that people can get slipped into different timelines, and that it's all very crazy and complicated.
Like
but
the Mandela effect.
Yes,
We
yes,
don't even
especially
need-
the Mandela effect.
We don't even need like multiple universes, multiverse theories and stuff like that, though, because we still can't determine whether or not this universe that we're in, the one that we're experiencing, whatever you're listening to right now is the universe that we're in, is finite or infinite. But think about the implications of it being infinite. That means there's an infinite number of yous running around doing slightly different things, and that's insane.
Yeah, and like what sort of effect that has.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be infinite for that to be true. It just has to be sufficiently large. The physicist Brian Greene did the math on this and determined how big the universe had to be for it to be mathematically guaranteed that there would be another copy of you somewhere out there in the universe. And it's not that unlikely.
No, it's not.
And because I think what you were mentioning about, putting your hand through things like that, it's because of the space and because of the uncertainty with particles. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not there, at least on the subatomic realm. Yeah. And it is not impossible that suddenly the quantum state of all of the particles that comprise me would just be not there, and I would just fall through the floor and cease to exist.
So, and that's the theory of like quantum physics, where it's like particles are always moving, and it's like a particle from this camera that is recording me right now could be in the other room at any given second. They're always in different
or just
places.
Not existing for a fraction of a second.
And it's crazy to think about that.
Right. There are theories about like thin places in the world where, you can just slip right into that other frequency of existence. And there are hundreds of thousands of people throughout history who just gone.
Rogers Campground, I swear to God, where we have Pork Fest and Fork Fest, and we also had Light and Liberty there recently. I swear to God, that is one of those places. Like time, it's just a strange place. Like it feels like you're in a different time period there. It like feels like the 1970s, and when you're there, it's like time ceases to exist sometimes. And I promise I wasn't on drugs either. Like I was completely sober every time I've been there. But it's
I suspect the last time anything was built there was the 70s.
Yeah,
so.
And that's probably why it feels that way. But it's a strange place, and I've had people had strange experiences where they've kind of just like lost multiple hours of time. Like they looked at their phone, went into another room, it's like 3:00, went into the room, and then next thing they know it's 6:00, and they're like, I have no clue where those 3 hours went. Mm-hmm. So wow. I have a very strong theory that Rogers Campground is one of those very interesting places in the world. I know a lot of people are going to tell me I'm crazy, but
I think there's lots of them. Time slips are a real thing that a lot of people experience. Like you just where to go?
People will always call this crazy. I mean, we just acknowledge the possibility that one of us could just cease to exist for a fraction of a second or fall to the floor. But I would remind everyone, these are all scientifically proven possibilities. They're just extremely unlikely to occur at once, but they're not impossible.
Mm-hmm. You could turn into a black hole. That's a scientific possibility.
Yeah.
It is. The
Probably
universe that
happen.
we're living in is weird.
I mean, we're literally... The Milky Way galaxy that we're in the center of it is a massive black hole that is literally collapsing in on itself.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty wacky just to begin with.
And, a century ago, we didn't even know, I guess about a century ago was around the time that special relativity came out. But let's go with a century ago. Anyway, no one even thought about black holes as something that could exist. And it was decades after that, I think it was in the 50s during an eclipse. No, the existence of black holes wasn't proven until the early 2000s, if I recall correctly. Because how do you prove something that you can't see?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people don't even believe that the moon exists. I don't want to say a lot of people, but there are some people out there who are like, the moon doesn't exist. And I'm like, so what's that you're looking at right now?
Well, there's people out there who believe the earth is flat.
Yeah.
So.
Well, but it also, if you go, like this article is saying, if you go into the theory that nothing is fact and we're just living in the Matrix and all of this is like a simulation, maybe the moon isn't real. Maybe none of ours are real.
Simulated for them?
Yeah. I don't know. Who knows? So the article goes on to say, but if there aren't any facts, how can science presume to describe a real world in the first place? for decades.
Well, it doesn't. That's what I love about quantum mechanics. It's like, okay, we're trying to study and measure reality here, but there's no reason or evidence to believe that the discoveries that we made, the mathematics that we have, is in any way indicative of the actual universe.
Right.
Because they just don't know.
We just accept it. We all use it, and so it becomes our fact.
Yeah, but we have no way of
exactly.
knowing if that's how things actually work or not.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
not
There's
fact.
so many things that we don't know. So like science is always changing, and it's very possible that physics as we know it is just completely wrong.
Yes, absolutely. Because science is never certain. There's always the possibility that it's wrong.
Well, and that's the point, right? Scientists are always trying to keep proving different theories and disproving them to find out what is actually fact.
But they can never do that. The highest degree of certainty in science is the theory.
Right.
There is no fact category. There's just the theory. More coming up about this. What do you think? Is objective reality real? 603-283-6160.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correa, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Free Talk Live.
You're privileged to drive the road. You must follow the laws.
No, I don't have to.
And you're going to double park and you're going to make a left-hand turn in front of a cop?
Can I respond to you here, Barbara?
Go right ahead.
I'm not going to run a red light in front of a cop because he has a gun and is willing to hurt me, but I've run plenty of...
Wrong. He's not going to hurt you. He's going to give you a ticket.
Oh, but if I decide not to pull over, what will he do?
Well, you're not obeying the law.
Barbara, I don't obey arbitrary words written down by strangers. I obey natural law, Barbara. That means if I do something, I expect consequences will come from that, sometimes good, sometimes bad.
You want a red light, somebody comes around and you kill him.
I would never run a red light like that. When I run a red light, I stop first, look around, make sure no one is in danger, and then I go through.
Oh, you are such a phony.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. And you know, we were the first major radio show to tell the world about Bitcoin. Where were you when the crypto revolution first began? Did you end up buying any back then? Well, it's 10 years later, and a new generation of crypto is hoping to change the world again. If you listened last year, you heard us talking about Intercoin, a new cryptocurrency to help unite local communities and businesses, make their economy stronger, all without having to rely on the state. Well, Intercoin is launching worldwide. Anywhere you live, this is your chance to buy it using your favorite Ethereum wallet, just by going to exchanges like Uniswap. Under Intercoin, you can even launch your own cryptocurrency for your own members and customers under your own brand. If you want to learn more, just go to intercoin.org. That's intercoin.org. And follow the steps there to get some Intercoin for yourself. Be part of the next generation. And this time, you heard it right here, intercoin.org. That's intercoin, I-N-T-E-R, coin.org. So we're talking about objective reality here and whether or not such a thing actually exists. And I mean, realistically, we can never really know one way or the other because we're all subjective beings who experience things subjectively. And our agreement that a phenomenon is being perceived does not in any way suggest that the phenomenon is actually occurring. It could just be mass delusional psychosis, and there's no outside measurement by which we can make that sort of assessment.
And I hate that I'm making this comparison right now, but I'm going to have to because it's just like so relevant. It's kind of like people's perception of COVID, where some people are reporting, oh, nope, nothing's happening. Like some people literally think that COVID isn't real. And then some people are like, nope, the hospitals are overflowing with COVID patients and everybody's dying. And so it's like two people are living very concretely in their realities. And it's almost like what you think literally becomes your reality. And it's like we're constantly sending thoughts out, and whatever we think boomerangs back at us, and we receive that. You know how many people were so freaked out about COVID and they were like sanitizing their hands and they weren't leaving their house and
bleaching
they were being
their groceries.
Yep, bleaching their groceries. They were being so cautious, and those were the first people to get COVID.
Mm-hmm.
All the people that were taking all the precautions.
Sure.
And it seemed like everybody who was just like, they literally manifested illness within themselves. And I think everything's almost like that. You know, what we think we become and what we think is our reality.
One of the most interesting scientific discoveries, I think, about that was the Higgs boson, that what they called the God particle. They called it that mockingly, but of course Christians didn't get the irony when physicists proved the existence of the God particle. But it was predicted based entirely on mathematics and this very strange theory that required the Higgs field to exist and to interact with particles at a very specific point in time in order for particles to gain mass. And it was just either the Higgs, I don't remember his first name, either he was a genius of extraordinary levels that was able to make all of these connections and come out with this theory that just turned out to be true. And then decades later, physicists discovered the Higgs boson particle. And it's just so overwhelmingly unlikely. I hear that and I think, man, their expectation of finding that really feels like that's why they found it.
Well, even a lot of scientific experiments, you can't observe them because even just watching them, even just observing the experiment will throw it off.
Right.
And that's no coincidence. And that's a well-known thing.
Yeah, it's especially true in the subatomic world, where if you want to measure an electron, the only thing you can really do is shoot another electron at it.
Yeah.
So then you can find out, where it was at a specific point, but you can't figure out how fast it was going because you only interacted with it for an infinitesimally small amount of time.
And there's only so much that our eyes can see.
Well, and these
Also
people
true.
they're just people, fallible people, and confirmation bias exists in the scientific community too.
True.
So if they want something to be true, they, whether knowingly or not, are going to skew what they're doing towards making that happen.
There's also a lot that our brains filter out that is happening around us that we just don't notice. I mean, just in the course of doing this show, I filtered out countless automobiles driving by that I know for a fact drove by, and I saw the headlights. I probably even heard some of them, but my brain filtered them out entirely. So what is real except perception, as far as I can tell?
Or even optical illusions. I mean, one person sees one thing, another, I remember at one point there was like the blue dress thing. Some people saw the dress as blue, some people saw it as gold, and they are two completely different colors, but what people see was all different.
Yes.
Well, your brain lies to you. Your brain is not capable of processing everything that's going on around you, and so it just processes what it needs to, and then it fills in all the blanks. That's why, say you're walking down the hallway and you see something out of the corner of your eye, it's because your brain says, oh, I think there's a person over there for a split second, and then it's like, oh, no, there isn't.
This happened to me
now
before
it's
the
not
show
there.
today. As I was leaving, I had left something turned on, and it was a video game controller, and it vibrated against the table, and I thought it was someone talking outside. So, because I didn't know what it was, I was like, who the hell is outside talking? And then it happened again. And I looked around. Even my puppy was curious about at this point, and I was like, yeah, no, girl, I don't know what it was. And then it happened again, and my brain finally went, oh, okay, yes, that's not a person talking outside. That's the controller sitting on the table.
It will fill in things. That's why we see, pictures in clouds and stuff like that.
It fills in the spaces.
I think periodolus or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't remember
pareidolia.
Yeah, that's
I think
it.
That's
the phenomenon where the brain recognizes patterns that aren't really there, like me hearing a noise and thinking, that's someone talking outside, even though it isn't. And upon further investigation, I'm like, okay, this is my Switch controller, but really, there's no way for me to prove that it was my Switch controller that was actually doing. That's what I experienced, but maybe I was imagining things.
Right. Yeah, or maybe somebody was talking outside.
Also
who knows?
true.
Yeah,
right. And then your brain says, "Well, that happened too, so it must be that." And now we're just going to decide it's that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but if there aren't any facts, how can science presume to describe a real world in the first place? For decades, and philosophically much longer, this has served as a great bit for entertaining dinner guests, but Weiner's thought experiment wasn't really anything more than that until now. In 2020, physicists realized that recent quantum technology advancements made it possible to create the Weiner's friend test as a real-world experiment. In essence, we can create different realities and compare them in a lab to see if they can be reconciled or cohere in one system. And researcher Maz Milano of Heriot-Watt University, along with a handful of researchers, said that they performed this long-awaited experiment for the first time, creating distinct realities, compare and contrasting them, and discovering that they are, in fact, irreconcilable.
So I'm not up to date on what exactly they did, but it sounds like they simulated different realities. I don't know. I'd be curious to know what the experiment actually entailed.
I think the article goes on to tell us. So quantum entangled portions reproduced Weiner's thought experiment. Weiner's initial thought experiment was a simplistic in principle, starting with a single polarized proton that can have either vertical or horizontal polarization upon measuring. And we will continue on with what the thought experiment was when we come back.
Yeah, because it sounds fascinating. And, quantum computing has come a long way. I think Google they developed a time crystal or something, whatever that means. I didn't even look into it. What are your thoughts? Because quantum computing is going to change everything. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Weiner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. A top U.S. military official says it's possible that the country could cooperate with the Taliban on future counterterrorism operations in Afghanistan. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, was speaking to reporters for the first time since the U.S. completed its troop withdrawal earlier this week after 20 years.
We don't know what the future of the Taliban is, but I can tell you from personal experience that this is a ruthless group from the past, and whether or not they change remains to be seen. And as far as our dealings with them at that airfield or in the past year or so, in war, you do what you must in order to reduce risk to mission and force, not what you necessarily want to do.
Any possibility of coordination against ISIS-K with them?
It's possible.
In recent weeks, the U.S. had been cooperating with the Taliban, its longtime enemy who now control Afghanistan, in order to facilitate the evacuation of more than 120,000 people from the country. U.S. President Joe Biden says America is firmly committed to keeping Ukraine safe against Russia. He welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to the White House just days after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which has left allies questioning U.S. security commitments. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
President Biden said he wanted Europe whole, free and at peace, reassuring President Zelensky that the US is a country, despite the pullout from Afghanistan, that can be relied on.
And the United States remains firmly committed to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity in the face of Russian aggression.
Zelensky said the US was a supporter of Ukraine's territorial integrity, following Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the continued border conflict with Moscow-backed separatists. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
A bankruptcy settlement has dissolved Purdue Pharma, the maker of the highly addictive painkiller OxyContin. That clears the way to resolve thousands of opioid lawsuits, but critics say it shields the family that owns the drug maker. U.S. correspondent Rachel Silverman reports from Oakland.
The plan dissolves the drug maker and shifts assets to a new company not controlled by the Sackler family, whose members currently own Purdue Pharma. The new company will be owned by a trust run to combat the opioid epidemic. The bankruptcy plan includes a $4.5 billion contribution from the Sackler family members, but it shields them from future opioid litigation. The Sacklers have denied allegations they bear responsibility for the opioid addiction crisis.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You're welcome to join the discussion. Do you believe in objective reality? 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Because whether or not people like to believe it, if you believe in objective reality, it is just a belief. You don't know anything, ultimately. You just believe things to certain degrees. And that's the nature of the universe, because nothing can be proven.
All I know is that I know nothing.
Yes. I believe a lot, but I don't actually know anything because nothing can be known.
Exactly. So moving forward with the quantum entangled protons that were reproduced as Weiner's thought experiment. So the initial thought experiment was simplistic in principle, starting with a single polarized proton that can be either vertical or horizontally polarized upon measuring. The law of quantum mechanics holds that protons exist in both states of polarization simultaneously. and this is called superposition.
And it's not until someone observes them that it's determined whether it's horizontal or vertical.
But who's to say if it's what it really is?
Also true.
So, in his thought experiment, Weiner imagined a friend measuring the state of a proton in a different lab and recording the result while Weiner watched from afar. He has no clue what his friend's measurement is, and thus forced to assume that the proton and its measurement are a state of superposition of every possible outcome for the experiment. Weiner can say, however, the fact of the superposition existence is real, and strangely, this state of affairs suggests that the measurement can't have taken place. Obviously, this stands as a direct contradiction to Weiner's friend's point of view, who just measured and recorded the proton's polarization. He can even call Weiner and tell him the measurement was taken without revealing the results. This means that the two realities are at odds with one another, and it calls into question the objective status of the facts established by the two observers.
So, for the first observer, Weimar, I think you said was his name?
Yeah.
The measurement hasn't happened because he can't see that it happened, but his friend can call him and tell him about it. So for Weimar, the particle, its orientation still hasn't been developed, discerned. It could be horizontal or vertical, but for his friend, it has been determined, and it's X.
Yes.
It's vertical or it's horizontal. And those two realities exist in conflict with each other because for one person, the experiment hasn't happened. It's still a superposition of possibilities. For the other person, it has happened.
Exactly. And the new research reproduced Weiner's thought experiment by using entangled techniques for many particles at the same time. This is a breakthrough experiment from Porietti and his colleagues. In the state-of-the-art 6-proton experiment, we realized that this extended Weiner's friend scenario. They added in the report, and it raised some baffling questions that have forced physicists to confront the nature of reality. There might be a loophole to some assumptions that made this unknowable reality conclusional necessary. But if everything holds up to the future scrutiny, it turns out reality does not exist.
Fascinating way to put it.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they got that conclusion. There might be a loophole to some assumptions that made this unknowledgeable reality conclusional necessarily, but if everything holds up to future scrutiny, it turns out that reality does not exist. I guess that is true.
Yeah, I mean, if the experiment holds up to peer review and is repeatable and all of that stuff, but sure, because there's no way to determine whether Weimar or his friend is actually correct about what is going on with the particle. Sure, you could make the argument that Weimar has more direct knowledge of the particle or more experience interacting with the particle, but that doesn't exist for Weimar. Weimar's just hearing about it. So it's very fascinating. I'm interested to hear where this goes. Is that the end of the article?
So the next time your friends think something is or isn't the case, consider interjecting with the argument from quantum physics. They're both wrong. And so are you, because even the simple fact of disagreement itself is just another illusion. I love that.
Yeah,
that just made my day, honestly, because there's so much going on in the world where people are at odds and they're fighting, and everybody thinks they're right. And I just love the statement, "You're all wrong. Everybody's wrong. Everything's wrong, and nothing exists. Chill out."
Yeah, absolutely. One of the people that I follow on on Facebook, but in general, is Erin, who heads the Breaking Bread Village. She had me on when I ran for, most people haven't heard from her. It's a very small show. But she had me on when I was running for sheriff. And one of the things that she likes to do is instead of trying to change people's minds, she just listens to them.
Yeah.
When they disagree. She's like, thank you for your viewpoint, rather than trying to tell them why their viewpoint is wrong. Yeah. And that's also a good approach.
And it's really a wonderful skill to listen, because it seems like most people speak or they are communicating just to respond, and everybody thinks they're right, and it's like constantly people are just trying to put their viewpoint out, and they're trying to convince you and change your mind. And it's a really strong skill to just sit there and listen and absorb information rather than constantly listening to respond. Just listen to listen. Just listen to understand.
I ran into that at my very first Fork Fest. I think it was Somalia Fest that year. I had never spent any time hanging out with a bunch of libertarians, so I didn't know what to expect. And I'm not kidding. That was one of the things I learned within the first few days, is that nobody's listening to anyone else. They're just waiting for you to stop so they have the opportunity to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't stop, they'll just interrupt you. So, yeah, listening, valuable skill, especially in a world where we can't actually prove that anyone is right or wrong or that anything actually exists. And I challenge you, as crazy as it is, you can't prove that the people you're listening to right now aren't computer programs, aren't simulations, that you're the only real player character in this scenario.
Yeah, maybe everybody's NPCs, non-playing characters. We're just in the Matrix.
It can't be proven one way or the other. It's scary, but I find it liberating. That it's a lot of Christians have that same argument in regard to death, and so you don't believe in an afterlife, you don't believe in heaven or hell? Doesn't that scare you? No, that's liberating. It means I'm free to be whatever I want to be and to do whatever I want to do, and I don't have this eternity hanging over me.
Yeah,
to me, it's liberating.
It is very liberating. I agree with that,
but not to a lot of them, and
I think that one specifically forces you to become a good person on your own.
I think so as well, because, there's no external reward for it. I can imagine being the kind of person who only does good things because they think they're going to be rewarded for it in the afterlife.
Or punished for not doing the right
exactly.
things. I do the right things because it's the right things to do.
Absolutely. One of the not right things to do, though, is stocking up on toilet paper.
Again?
Americans are stocking up on toilet paper again.
Get up a day, y'all. What's wrong with you?
Are the shares for Taco Bell also going up? Is that the explanation? What is the deal with toilet paper?
So I remember at one point, somebody was like, in the beginning when there was the first toilet paper shortage, they're like, people know this is a respiratory virus, right? This isn't like a gastrointestinal thing.
Maybe there's dysentery going around and we don't know yet.
I never understood the toilet paper shortage of last year, and I will never understand it. To me, okay, there's a pandemic. Run out and buy the toilet paper is not a rational response.
No.
But that's what Americans are doing, and they're back to buying up toilet paper again. Procter & Gamble, the biggest U.S. manufacturer of toilet paper and paper towels, said that it is ramping up production as demand increases. I'm not sure demand ever actually went down. When I go to CVS, the wipes that I order from Amazon on auto delivery, it's hit or miss whether or not they're actually going to show up or whether or not I'm just not going to be charged for them.
Huh.
Yeah, and frequently CVS has none here on their shelves. I'm not sure the shortage ever went away, or that demand ever actually, or that supply ever actually increased to meet the demand. The maker of Charmin toilet paper and Bounty paper towels is speeding up production lines, running factories 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and investing to increase shipping volumes, said a spokeswoman. Americans, what are you doing? Stop buying toilet paper. Start buying cryptocurrency. That's a much better solution to what is happening today. It's true, you can't use cryptocurrency for the same purposes, but in the long run, it's probably more valuable. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey.
Who do you think
Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me?
Because you scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. The LRN.FM's social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. With you tonight, it's Aria, Nikki, and Lori. And during one of the breaks earlier, I was complaining about how everything I've ordered in the last several weeks is just, I'm constantly getting emailed notifications about delays. Everything is getting delayed. And this has been going on since the pandemic started. Amazon used to be worth it. Amazon Prime used to be worth it. And I imagine it still is since I don't have to pay for shipping.
Yeah.
But the 2-day shipping was one of the biggest selling points of Amazon Prime. And that went away about 18 months ago, and it doesn't look like it's going to come back.
Yeah, it's very give or take. Like, I ordered something and it came the next day, but it was only, I ordered maybe 8 things, and then one of them came the next day, and then half of them are coming in 2 weeks.
I canceled Prime, and then we just use Purse, so then someone else uses their Prime, and we get to use crypto.
I can't use Purse
There
at the
you go.
moment. But Amazon might have an answer to their delivery driver shortage to recruit pot smokers. Amazon has a solution. The company is advising its delivery partners, the mom and pops that operate the ubiquitous blue Amazon vans. I didn't know that Amazon themselves. I've never seen an actual Amazon delivery van.
I don't know if they use them in New Hampshire. I know in Mass we had them, but I think in New Hampshire they use like UPS. They like subcontract the other like UPS or whatever.
They have
FedEx.
Amazon vans and also like just guys in their own vans, like contractors.
Yeah.
Okay. It's telling them to prominently advertise that they don't screen applicants for marijuana use, according to correspondence reviewed by Bloomberg and interviews with 4 business owners. Doing so can boost the number of job applicants by as much as 400%, Amazon says in one message, without explaining how it came up with the statistic. Conversely, the company says screening for marijuana cuts the prospective work pool by up to 30%. Up to 30% seems high. I can't imagine there are that many people actually smoking pot.
I thought that seemed low.
Really?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people smoke pot nowadays.
Yeah.
But
My grandmother used to smoke pot before she died.
One delivery partner who stopped screening applicants at Amazon's request says marijuana was the prevailing reason most people failed drug tests. Now that she's only testing for drugs like opiates and amphetamines, more drivers pass. And more drivers means more deliveries being made, which means your stuff will get to you quicker, which I think is a good thing because I don't have a whole lot. If I order something, it's usually because, hey, I want this thing and I kind of want it now.
Yeah.
I don't pre-plan my future desires to be like, oh, it's going to arrive and then I will want it. No, and that's just the way it works. Other delivery companies are continuing to screen applicants concerned about the insurance and liability implications in the many states where weed use remains illegal. I don't think there are many states where the majority of states have some form of legalized marijuana, I think, even if it's just medical. They also worry that ending drug testing might prompt some drivers to toke up before going out on a route. I've got to tell you, man, I've worked in delivery before, and every single one of the drivers was constantly high.
Yeah, I think it's like a prerequisite, right?
I think so. I don't know about people who deliver for Amazon, but in my experience, delivery drivers are universally high. Because otherwise, the job is pretty boring. But
yeah.
Then you get to drive around, be stoned, and listen to music.
And I think that's why that's the part of the appeal of being a delivery driver, especially like pizza and stuff like that. Maybe not so much like UPS or Amazon, but they can kind of just like drive around and like smoke pot, and it's pretty minimal interaction with the public. So
yeah.
Most jobs, it's silly to test for marijuana usage anyway, because it stays in your system for so long. You're going to tell me that my weekend habits interfere with your job?
Yeah, but nobody cares about alcohol, and that's way more of a problem. Like, nobody talks about like pot addicts like stealing from their mom and like,
Right.
Yeah.
So employers are dangling a variety of recruiting incentives amid the post-pandemic labor crunch, since hiring bonuses alone no longer stand out. Target announced it would pay college tuition for its employees. Applebee's offered free appetizers to applicants in its push to recruit 10,000 workers. I mean, that's not bad. Hey, we'll give you free appetizers if you just come in here and apply.
I guess so, but like if I'm looking for a job and I'm going to need like a sign-on bonus or something, like a free appetizer isn't going to do it for me.
Well, presumably they are offering some sort of bonus as well. But I know there was, I think, a McDonald's in Georgia that was offering $50 just for people to come in and interview.
And McDonald's,
That's
like
crazy.
the McDonald's in my hometown is paying people like $20 an hour right now.
Yeah, no one wants to work, and I still don't understand where the hell everyone went. It wasn't like this 2 years ago.
No, I have no clue.
But now you walk down Main Street here in Keene, and there's nothing but help wanted signs. I don't know what happened. A lot of people say it's because people moved home during the pandemic, and so they're just living with their parents and don't really have a need for a job.
But it's everywhere, though.
It is everywhere.
I don't know. So it's not even just like, oh, we're in Keene and it's a college town. It's like...
It's across the United States.
Yeah, it's across the United States.
Amazon, which is lobbying the federal government to legalize marijuana. I don't know how much I believe that statement. I read it here in this article, but I don't know if I believe it. In June, announced that it would no longer screen applicants for the drug. It wasn't long before the company began urging its delivery partners to do the same. In a statement, an Amazon spokeswoman said that marijuana testing has disproportionately affected communities of color, stalling job growth. She also said the company has zero tolerance for employees working while impaired. If a delivery associate is impaired at work and tests positive post-accident or due to reasonable suspicion, that person would no longer be permitted to perform services for Amazon. But that's the issue with marijuana testing in the first place. Just because a driver tests positive doesn't mean they were high when an accident happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It could have been at any point in the last 30 to 45 days, depending on their metabolism.
And at this point, smoking pot is almost like smoking cigarettes. Like the people I know with hefty pot habits, it like barely even affects them.
True.
Like it's not like they're like stoned. They're just like, that's their baseline, you know?
You would think if it was really important to them, they could figure out some way to test whether or not you are actively.
I think they did develop a mouth swab that does that, or at least it's more limited in how far back it goes. I don't recall. But I remember having to get a job where they did a hair test going back 6 months to make sure I didn't smoke pot.
No,
that's
way.
crazy.
I would have
walked
out.
Just for pot? Oh my gosh.
I would have walked out.
Well, I didn't even have the job. It was just the pre-drug test screening, but it was it was to be a slot technician at a casino. So I mean, it was a good job, but still, I was like, what does it matter?
Right. What do you need to know what I did 6 months ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hiring and recruiting drivers was a top concern among 100 delivery business owners that gathered last week in Las Vegas to brainstorm ideas to help their companies thrive. With the busy holidays shopping season looming, they're struggling to stand out in the tight labor market. Because it is tight, man. Everywhere is hiring. No one has a staff. I was just trying to order something during the last break so I could pick it up on the way home, and they're closed.
All the restaurants are closed, and they all have like funky hours.
Yeah.
All the stores close super early now. Like, there's no such thing as a 24-hour store anymore.
I think Cumbies and some of them are, like Cumbies, CVS.
CVS is still 24 hours?
They stopped being briefly, but they went back to being 24 hours. But I mean, there's like one person there.
Oh.
The rest of it, if you can't use the automatic cash register, if you need an actual person, you're going to be there a long time waiting on this one person to actually show up and be able to help you. So Amazon delivery contractors are often outbid by school bus companies where drivers can make more than $20 an hour and are home for dinner. Amazon contract drivers typically earn $17 an hour and often work late into the night to keep up with demand. Well, there's the issue. You had the state and its schools and its buses paying people more than Amazon, a company that has to actually earn its money, has been able to do. One solution is to raise their wages, but that can only happen if Amazon agrees to pay its delivery departments more for their services, which the company can be slow to do. So Amazon doesn't really want to pay people to deliver its stuff, evidently.
Yeah, even though Jeff Bezos is a gazillionaire.
I mean, he gave away half of his wealth, and he's still one of the richest people in the world. If he's not back to being the richest. This pandemic has been huge for Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
I already used Amazon a lot, but then they implemented all of these stupid policies all around me. You have to wear a mask to come in here. I was like, no, I don't. I can just use Amazon.
Thanks, Jeff.
So I'm as bad as any. I looked at my Amazon history one day a couple of weeks ago, and I jokingly said, oh my God, I'm the one who paid for Jeff Bezos to go to space.
I know. I don't even want to think about my Amazon history. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, but it's such a useful service. I mean, they nailed it. A to Z, everything you could want.
Literally everything you could ever want. It's like, why would I go anywhere else?
Yep.
So,
and they'll deliver it right to your door.
Exactly.
But evidently they're looking for drivers, so that's good news for the pot smokers out there who are looking for employment. Amazon and its subcontracting delivering companies, they evidently won't drug test you, which is good because you're on marijuana. You're probably driving more safely than you otherwise would be. But that's it for tonight's show. You can join us in the meantime. Join our chat server, which you can find at chat.freetalklive.com. There you can chat with the hosts and other listeners of the show. Again, that's chat.freetalklive.com. See you there.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their